Hello, beautiful nerds. A few weeks ago, I had the honor of being a guest on one of the best podcasts of all time. I've listened to every episode. I'm a Patreon supporter. It's been a genuine comfort and companion to me for quite a while. It's called Blank Check with Griffin and David. It's a movie podcast that dives into directors' filmographies. I showed up during the Sam Raimi series, specifically examining his 1995 masterpiece, The Quick and the Dead. I'm such a fan of this podcast, and I had such a great time. And so I just thought I'd share this thing I love as a bonus episode with you. Just a warning, there are 78 curse words in this episode. And since it's their show, we decided to leave them as is. You've been warned. Okay, enjoy.
I'm so damn fast, I can wake up at the crack of dawn, rob 2 banks, a train, and a stagecoach, shoot the tail feathers off a duck's ass at 300 feet, record a 3-hour podcast, and still be back in bed before you wake up next to me.
That's pretty good.
Thank you. I was trying to figure out which one to replace with podcasts, and then I was like, just add it to the list.
Yeah.
Just throw it in. Exactly.
It makes it even more impressive, the brag.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. I thought that was an okay young Leo, right?
I thought it was pretty good. It kind of had that.
It's the rhythm of, right, yeah.
The ring of Titanic and Romeo and Juliet, that, well, not Romeo and Juliet so much, but like that kind of like swaggery quality. I don't know how to describe it.
It's funny how different and how much he is still the same from adult Leo to child Leo. You know, like this is, I'd say when you get to Titanic and Romeo and Juliet right after this, right?
Right after.
That's when he's like a young man, right? He's become like a heartthrob. This is maybe the last performance where he still feels like a kid. I mean, he's literally playing the kid, but he feels like
he is playing the kid. Right. Absolutely.
He feels like a boy in this movie.
Yeah, and he's about 8 inches wide. He's very little. He's very little.
He's quite petite, yes.
He's so little and delicate, and I feel like I think so much of the narrative around Leo was like his whole post-Titanic Scorsese jump was like, I need people to stop thinking of me as boyish, right? Like he went so out of his way to stop being floppy-haired, stop being sort of like charming and light and all that sort of stuff. But you still see so many kind of similar mannerisms and tricks, even in how he plays his most hard-boiled people today.
Yes, you do. But there was that, and it suits him.
Yes.
Obviously, in this and in Titanic thing. There's that sort of punky, I think I'm so special quality to these early performances that totally suits. Like it's perfect casting here, right?
Right.
That he's maybe like whatever, fully convinced that he's a movie star when you're like, well, you're not a movie star yet, Leo. But now it's weird because he's Leonardo DiCaprio.
I know. It is one of the most fascinating things about watching this movie is like all the home media releases, and I imagine even just like the graphics they use on streaming sites and rentals or whatever are sort of like the 4 of them at equal billing, right? Like Stone, Hackman, Crowe, DiCaprio. And then you watch the opening of this movie and it's like Stone, Hackman, Quick and the Dead,
right?
Russell Crowe, names, and Leonardo DiCaprio. And they are
he did get the end.
Yeah, no, I know. They're the central quartet, but it's like the 2 guys immediately become the biggest fucking movie stars imaginable right after this movie. And Hackman has like 6 more years of being elder statesman before he retires. And Sharon Stone, this is one of the movies that I think causes Hollywood to sort of disregard her prematurely.
Yes. Although this is this not her Oscar nomination year?
Is it?
Because Casino is 95, isn't it?
Wow.
Yes, Casino is 95. But I mean, I think you're right that this is. I mean, there's a couple movies coming. We can talk Stone in a minute.
Yeah,
there's like a few years coming up that I guess is the true nail in the coffin for her as a movie star. But this movie definitely underperformed. Go ahead.
I think it's her blank check. Like she's real a producer. She's like
Yes.
she's coming up.
That
and
is my
she-
exact point.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. More
Yes.
than Raimi's. Raimi's is very confusing filmography for blank check purposes, as far as I'm concerned.
But she used a check to hire Raimi, someone
Yeah.
who people thought of only for doing sort of junky sci-fi horror sort of pulpy stuff. I don't think they would have been quick, no pun intended, to hire him for this. She used her check for Crow. She used her check for DiCaprio.
Literally.
Like,
yeah.
no, but like, right, exactly. This was really her thing.
Yeah.
Got Sony to buy it for her. I do think you're right, David, that like Casino feels like a coronation moment of like, fine, we're gonna respect you as a serious actress, but also now can you go away? There was a weird dismissal in the Casino nomination, I find, where people are like, okay, Scorsese got a good performance out of her.
Yeah. So the year after this, let's just dive right in. I have to give this
Sure.
piece.
Yeah, no, of
I
course.
know we
Look,
have to
this
introduce the show in our
It's
guest.
Blank
but-
Check with Griffin and David. I'm Griffin.
I'm David.
And I'm Roman Mars.
Now, wait a second.
You can't do that.
I know I'm supposed to speak before I'm introduced, but I wanted to introduce myself before I was introduced.
That's the one
That
thing you
is-
can't do on this show.
That is brilliant, actually. Yes.
You can speak before you're introduced, and you can make a good point, which you did before you're introduced, but you can't introduce yourself before you've been introduced.
Well, I don't play by your rules.
No, look, you're podcasting legend. I guess you can do what you want.
Do you not immediately, the second Roman came on the Zoom, David, feel like my voice sucks? Like the second
But
Roman,
it wasn't. I didn't even have Griff. I didn't
Yeah.
even have the the window in the front of my. I didn't have
Same.
the window open. Right.
Same. I
was
just
looking at
heard the voice.
So I just heard hello, and I mean I can't even.
We
do
can't
it.
even do it.
And I was like, what the, yes, it really feels like I am like a high school basketball player and like, an NBA guy just walked in the locker room. And
I
I'm just
feel
like,
like-
oh, I see.
I feel like I'm the kid and fucking Hackman just walked in.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that makes Roman sound scary and mean.
No.
That's
Look,
right.
Griff, I want to say something about Sharon Stone right away.
I want to say that it's a podcast about filmographies,
Yes.
directors who have massive success early on in their careers and are given a series of blank checks, make whatever crazy passion projects they want. And sometimes those checks clear, and sometimes they bounce. Pew pew, baby. A shootout. I couldn't think of a good. Whatever. It's a miniseries on the films of Sam Raimi. It's called Podcast Me to Hell. Today we're talking about his 1995 Western, The Quick and the Dead, which I think a lot of people don't know exists, and I think a lot of people who know it exists don't realize it's a Sam Raimi movie, which is bizarre because it is so much a Sam Raimi movie.
It is, and it should be called The Slaps, and it's great. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's so
Sorry.
good. It's
So good.
The rules and it fucks.
Yeah, exactly. But listen,
Yes.
speaking on Sharon Stone,
Our guest today is Roman Mars of 99% Invisible. He already introduced himself.
obviously Sharon Stone's early career is busting out of hit genre films like
Sure.
Total Recall and then Basic Instinct and then Sliver, right?
Mhm.
Like these are where she's making her name. This year she's got The Quick and the Dead, which we will talk about today, but did not do that well at the box office. But
Mhm.
she has Casino,
Mhm.
which is an undeniable hit. Maybe a little bit of a come down from like Goodfellas or whatever, but still, she gets an Oscar nomination.
I was going to say, a hit, it's certainly a win for her, but it was like, oh, Scorsese made lesser Goodfellas was the tag at the time.
Mhm.
Now, in the next year, in 1996, Griffin, she had two films. She had Diabolique, the remake of Les Diaboliques,
Big flop.
which is a big flop, and she had a Bruce Beresford movie called Last Dance that was also a big flop, right? Now, this is what I want to get to. There's a Golden Raspberry Award
Okay.
that existed for quite a while until from 1982 to 1999 called for the Golden Raspberry for Worst New Star.
Yep.
And she was nominated for it that year. And I saw that and I was like, what do you mean new star? Sharon Stone, like she'd been around for a while. Like what
Yeah.
were they thinking?
Yeah.
So let me read you, Griffin, the 5 nominees for Worst New Star for the 1996 Golden Raspberries, okay?
Okay.
These are rude, to be
Yeah.
clear.
No,
But
I
in
assumed as
classic
much. I'm
Razzie
bracing
fashion, I guess.
myself for rudeness. Okay.
Okay, here we go.
All right, one, and Ben's going to be mad. Beavis and Butthead and in Beavis and Butthead Do America.
What the fuck?
Straight
Producer
up rude.
Ben.
That's so like
Outraged.
undeserved. First of
Yeah.
all,
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
so cool.
Yeah. And
Whoever made this list is like such a nerd who doesn't like fun.
And the
I
movie
agree.
was a hit.
Totally. And it was a hit.
And
it
the
was
movie
good.
was a hit, and
It was
people
And it was
liked
good
it.
as hell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next
They
two
got
are
the guy from fucking Unsolved Mysteries, right? The
Yeah.
voice, the Unsolved Mysteries.
Right.
Sure.
What is his name?
I don't know, but that's a huge get as far as I'm concerned.
Wait, that's your argument against a particular Razzie knob?
Yeah.
Was
I
they
think
got...
there are other arguments. I don't think you have
There's
to go
other
that
stuff
far.
that's great too. It's got Hank Hill in it. I mean, come on, don't get me started.
Robert
Is it-
Stack? Was it Robert
Robert
Stack
Stack.
at the time?
Robert Stack.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So some other nominees. Ellen DeGeneres was nominated for Mr. Wrong. I guess that was sort of the first Ellen star vehicle. It didn't work out, right? That's more.
Pretty disastrous movie. Yeah.
Next, there's a group nomination for 4 Friends cast members. So they're going after the Friends cast members.
So 96, would it be is Ed in there?
Ed is in there. Matt LeBlanc. I feel like that's the one they're really going for.
Yeah.
Because the
Ki-
others are David Schwimmer in The Pallbearer.
Right.
Matt Reeves's directorial debut.
Hmm.
Lisa Kudrow in Mother, which is like a supporting role. So that's a real
Yeah.
stretch.
Yes.
And Jennifer Aniston and She's the One, which I feel like was a movie that everyone thought was okay. So they really should have just nominated Matt LeBlanc and Ed. That would have actually been on
Yes.
target.
Fair. Yeah.
Then they've got Pamela Anderson in Barbed Wire, who
Okay.
wins. Now, an obvious Razzie thing, right? They
Yeah.
just pick on the model / act, right? You know, like.
But
you
let's
know,
put a
right.
pin in that. I'm going to come back to that later. This is connected to a larger point I want to make. Go on.
Sure. And then the 5th nominee is Sharon Stone, but it's billed as the new quote unquote serious
Yes.
Sharon Stone
Right.
in
Mhm.
Diabolique and Last Dance. So they're basically, stamping her with the don't try and fool us,
Right.
Sharon Stone. You're not a serious actress. You're a genre actress.
Last Dance is a death row movie.
Yeah.
Right. She's the one making the clemency case.
She is on death row for a murder, and Rob Morrow is trying to save her from death row. You've also got Randy Quaid, Peter Gallagher, Skeet Ulrich.
Wow. I mean, I'm looking at after
Not a hit
this. No. I'm just looking at after this, right? So 97, she doesn't make a movie. 98, she's got Sphere, which is a flop,
It is. Good
a
movie.
high
though.
profile flop.
What if there was a sphere?
Sure. She's got Mighty, which I think is viewed as another sort of failed Oscar bait movie for her.
Yes, although quite a sweet film. I haven't seen it since I was a teenager, but I remember it being
Yeah, I
Fine.
remember it being relatively fine. Gets a Golden Globe nomination for that.
right. She's kind of like a fake lead. Like the kids
Yes.
are obviously the leads. She's the supporting mom, but yeah,
Right.
it's billed as a Sharon Stone movie.
Right. Then Voice and Ants,
99 is rough. 99
99 is
She's a voice in
Gloria?
Ants. Yeah,
which is
yeah.
a
The Gloria remake. No one wanted that.
disastrous movie. Right. Lumet remaking Cassavetes only 15 years later, whatever it is.
Bizarre. A bizarre choice.
Yes. The Muse, which she gets the Golden Globe win for that. And the story immediately becomes she bought every member of the Hollywood Foreign Press like a Rolex. And she bought her way to the award. It's an infamous sort of this is how easily the Hollywood Foreign Press can be swayed story.
Griff, here's the thing. She didn't even get the win. That was the nomination.
Are you kidding me?
Story. She lost to Janet McTeer for Tumbleweeds.
Wow.
But the Golden Globes ordered all 82 members to return luxury gift watches that Sharon
Wow.
Stone and or October Films had sent. So yes, it became this embarrassing, like she didn't even earn
Wow.
the award, the nomination. She's pretty good in The Muse, isn't she? That movie's all right.
She is good in that. Yeah. But like truly from that point on, she's done. Simpatico. If These Walls Could Talk Too. Picking Up the Pieces, which I think isn't even theatrically released. Beautiful Joe. Like these are like movies that do not exist.
I know. By the time she's popping up in Catwoman as the villain,
Yes.
it's this like jokey thing of like Sharon Stone, like remember her? And of course, she was famously attacked by a Komodo dragon.
Yes. Right. That's the
Somewhere
other
in
thing.
there as
Wait,
well.
what?
That's right.
What are
Yeah.
you talking about?
She was
Like a
Ben,
Komodo
exactly.
dragon.
He's talking about exactly what he just said. She was attacked by a Komodo dragon. She
Yeah.
How
took
big are those fucking things?
Her
They're the
husband at the
biggest
time-
land animals or whatever. They're like 10 feet long or something.
can be.
They're terrifying.
They
Okay,
paid to
what?
close down a reptile house at a zoo so they could have a private tour, right?
Yeah. Well, she was married to Phil Bernstein, who was the
Right.
editor-in-chief or, I don't know, something of the San Francisco Chronicle. So this is the local story that I knew of the time. And
right, you're an SF guy.
They closed down. Oh, I'm an East Bay guy. I will correct you.
I'm so sorry. I'm so
Wow.
sorry. You're a Bay Area guy.
Wow.
and then but I lived in San Francisco too, so I don't mean to be so rude about it. But they closed down to get a special viewing of the Komodo dragon, and it actually bit Phil Bernstein's foot.
Right.
And which is notable because the way that they kill things is they have this horrible mess of bacteria in their mouth. And they don't actually like kill things by killing them, chomping them. They kill things by biting them and then letting them fester and die and then eating them later.
Wait, that's kind of sick. That's so metal, actually, to be honest.
What they are very bizarre. I remember when you're a kid, I feel like you learn like Komodo dragons are like the largest lizards that exist. And you hear like, that sounds awesome. They're called dragons. And then you see them and they just kind of look like big lizards.
They're like
and
big
you're a little
lizards.
disappointed. Like they don't even look like a crocodile or something cool. They just look like and you never see them in comparison to anything. So they just kind of, it's tough to gauge size.
That's the thing. I can't get any perspective on them. They just kind of look like lizards.
Yeah,
They're pretty big.
They're
low
pretty
to the
big.
ground, obviously.
What's
So
there? There's
yeah.
there's a James Bond with the Komodo dragons in it.
I think
but-
it's Skyfall is the
Yeah,
one where
yes.
he's in Macau and he
Yes.
gets like kicked into a Komodo dragon pit or whatever. Yeah,
classic.
it's always happening.
But that is truly her biggest credit in that 5-year period, right? Between 99 and 2004, Catwoman, where they're repositioning it as, is this the sort of ironic comeback of Sharon Stone playing full camp? It's just news stories like that. And it's her going on the Golden Globes and giving a rambling speech and then Amy Poehler making fun of it. Like she just becomes this weird sort of pop culture figure who isn't even thought of as an actor anymore.
And it sucks because she is so good
She's
in
so
this.
good.
She is so good in this.
She's so good in this. I think she's a very underrated star in general, not by
I agree.
everybody, but by a lot. I think her 90s run is very strong and, and she took good risks. And certainly the story of this movie is her making a lot of correct, creative decisions.
Correct.
Like, she's handed some power and she uses it well.
Yeah. I mean, when this movie came out, I was a 20-year-old into movies. And so I saw it in the theater. I was very excited for this movie. And Sharon Stone was a thing I had to overcome to be excited about this movie because I only knew her as Basic Instinct, Sliver, and I never saw those movies, but they just were distasteful for me as a snobby movie guy, at the time. And but now when I watch it, and at the time I love this movie, but now when I watch it, I'm just like, she's amazing in this movie.
Yes.
She's
Yes.
so good in this movie.
She has incredible on-screen presence.
And I want more for her, like a time machine me wants more for her in her career than this.
But when we were doing the Verhoeven series some years ago and watching like Total Recall and Basic Instinct back to back, you're just like, how did within 5 years of Basic Instinct coming out, all of Hollywood decide she is a joke? Like it just doesn't make sense. And it's not like that's a fluke performance, but I do think if I can circle back to the Pamela Anderson thing, right? Because the Razzies are dumb and they're rude, but they do in their own stupid way represent the sort of worst type of consensus opinion around popular culture within eras, right? There are things that they do latch onto of just like, this is what the dumbest people feel. This is what they're reducing movements in pop culture to. And you look at a list like that, you look at a category like that, David, and two things I find run really, really strongly through the entire history of the Razzies is they hate things made for women.
No, they absolutely do.
Yeah.
Right.
For
They
sure.
also, look, they make fun of big, dumb boy action movies. They hate Michael Bay and Sylvester Stallone and whatever. But like, it does feel like movies that are specifically made for women, there's this attitude of the nerve. How dare you even try? What is this dumb shit? The other thing is they like hate anyone who too explicitly titillates them, right? Like, I'm not saying Pamela Anderson is good in Barbed Wire, but there's this fury of how dare you make this movie where you show us your tits the whole time, right? And like, they gave Basic Instinct so many fucking nominations. It is absurd. And it felt
That
like
is wild considering obviously the Basic Instinct. Right. Oh my God, I'm realizing Sharon Stone was also nominated for Worst New Star in 1992
Exactly.
for that.
Right.
She's been nominated twice.
Yeah.
Right.
It's
But
like
Rude.
it's
Yeah.
like rejecting her before she has a chance to reject their nerdy asses. You know
right,
what I mean?
right. But it's like it's a Madonna and the Whore thing of being like, how dare you be this sexy on screen in this hypersexual movie? That means I can't take you seriously. You have to be frivolous. And then once she makes the shift to like, I'm ready to use my clout to make serious films, interesting films, they're like, how dare you try to be serious now? You fucking piece of shit, you know? Like the first time they give her worst star for being in an erotic thriller, and the second time they give her a worst star nomination for not being in erotic thrillers anymore. Because the run in between is her doing like Sliver and Specialist and the movies that you would do after Basic Instinct if that's the thing you want to maintain. And the second she starts veering off from that, like the Razzies get angry at her again.
It's very interesting, beyond the Razzies, though, that like, I guess the roles, like Quick and the Dead is a great pick. That's sort of out of the ordinary in that she has actually identified a script with a very compelling female lead, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That she can play. And she's like, cool, I'm going to do this. Casino, obviously, that's Scorsese tapping her at the absolute perfect time for the absolute perfect role. She is such good casting in Casino. I love that performance. And then after that, things like Diabolique, Last Dance, Sphere feels like her agents, Hollywood, whoever being like, okay, let's find you more like steely ladies, right? Like, how can we class that up, or how can we, make that A-list? And I just feel like the scripts aren't there. Here's the other thing, and this is totally superficial, but she cuts her hair, right?
Yes.
Everything pre-Casino, long hair. And then post-Casino, she has the look that I knew when I was a teen person getting into movies. Sharon Stone always had short hair. She always had the like very short blonde hair in movies like The Mighty. Not in Gloria, obviously. She needs like the big,
But Muse, she has it
but
too,
the Muse,
right? Yeah.
Yeah, Sphere, like, and does that like kind of like put her in a weird like sort of post femme fatale box? I have no idea. I just feel like her image shifts and Hollywood gives up on her or something. I don't know. The Sharon Stone thing's weird.
No, but I mean, look, Roman, as the person who saw this in theaters at the time, and as you said, it's like there is that sense of even if her erotic thrillers or her more, sexy roles were big hits, that it was like, but we can't take that seriously. I also think on top of that, and tell me if I'm wrong here, everyone was just making fun of her all the time. Like even when she was at the peak of her career, she was kind of like a classic like Leno style punchline.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's the nature of those erotic thrillers. Like make in the same way that you talk about the Razzies, it makes people like nervous and nervously make jokes and nervously like dismiss her because they're afraid of their feelings.
Right. Right. And then when she cuts the hair and it's like, wait, you're not trying to be a pinup model anymore? Like you're not looking like the idealized form of a femme fatale? Then people get angry at her again.
It's a tragedy. What
it is.
Her career. But I also think that she probably, she stepped away. She seems to have a lot of other interests. She's super smart, and I'm pretty sure that part of her career was her choice too. I wouldn't like take that away from her because she definitely like made choices later on to not be in things, I'm sure.
Yes. I mean, she's talked about being like really fucking fed up with how everything works.
Why not?
Yeah.
Like absolutely why not?
And so, and especially because I think this is one of those ones where it is so Quick and the Dead is so against the grain. Like this is not the heyday of the Western. This is not, Sam Raimi is not an established director, A-list director. It is a strange role, and she took all that stuff put together and made this thing happen. And
yes,
it's just a testament to like how on it she was and how much she was not, really just trying to tick boxes in that sort of, kind of Will Smith way of just like, okay, I'm going to study all the blockbusters of the world and I'm going to decide I'm going to, make blockbusters. She just made a cool ass movie with her power, which is awesome.
She also like put her neck out on the line successfully for two of the guys who were about to become two of the biggest leading men in Hollywood and the man who would direct the first huge superhero franchise.
It's amazingly prescient. It's stunning. Yeah.
It's funny for 1995, and I can get into some of the context in a sec, but like when you think of Westerns, obviously, it was sort of a supposed boom for the 90s Western was sort of right. Dances with Wolves wins Best Picture, and then Unforgiven wins Best Picture.
Yeah.
And then you have these movies like Geronimo, you have Tombstone, City Slickers, Maverick,
City Slickers
right?
2,
Legend is a huge one.
And so in 1995, all the movies we just mentioned have come out, and I would say most of the movies we just mentioned were hits. Not Wyatt Earp, but most
not
of them.
Geronimo. Geronimo was a flop.
Not
The rest of them
Geronimo.
are all hits. Yeah.
And like this, I would say, is right when the bloom is again off the rose. Like Hollywood's Western comeback really just lasts a few years.
Yeah.
And by 1996, the only big Westerns I'm seeing here are From Dusk Till Dawn, which does not count. That's a horror movie, obviously, but it's got Western themes, I guess, Western aesthetics. I love that movie, to be clear. Lone Star, which is like a, dark neo-Western mystery contemporary.
Yeah.
And like, that's basically it. Like, I mean, this list has Last Man Standing. I don't think of that as a Western, really. Is it? It's like a prohibition movie. It's like gangsters.
Yeah, but it's definitely in the style of these. I mean, it's a remake of
it's a remake of Yojimbo.
Yojimbo, and what's the Western version of Yojimbo? I can't remember, but there's another one in between there.
And then by 97, it's like The Postman. That's like the only Western Hollywood.
This is what I was going to say, though. Like, Costner is the guy who's like really working to bring the Western back. And by the second half of the 90s, he's kind of shifted more to sci-fi. Like Postman is like Western sci-fi. He's done Westworld now, or Waterworld rather, not Westworld.
You can sneak in horses and stuff in like The Mask of Zorro.
Yeah.
Some Wild Wild West, like something like that, where it's like, it's not just a straight ahead Western, but The Quick and the Dead is really stripped down in that it's like, here we are in a town. There's a mean sheriff.
Right.
There's guys. There's a saloon. Everyone's got guns. This is not about like the American experience, in the West at all. It's about like, what if there was a town where everyone's job was cowboy who shoots you, right? Like, there's no like economics at work.
No, it's like fucking like Karate Kid Part 2 with shootouts or whatever. But also, yes, you have Gene Hackman doing a Western for the first time since he won an Oscar for playing the bad guy in a Western.
Which was just like 3 years ago. It wasn't that long ago.
It is really funny to me, the juxtaposition of those two characters, which are basically the same character.
Yeah.
But one of them is like serious with serious motivations, where you can see he's a good guy, or maybe at one point in his life was a good guy who went down a very, very dark path. And the Herod character in this one, where he's just a cartoon villain. And they're both so good.
I know.
I like both performances so very, very much. And it makes me think that maybe Gene Hackman is the best actor of all time.
There's a solid argument. Anytime I hear someone suggest that, it's hard to shoot it down. Like he's at least in that very, very upper realm of debate.
The whole thing with Gene Hackman is he could absolutely just give you Gene Hackman, right? Like if I just called him up and I was like, you're going to play kind of like a gritty, tough guy in this who doesn't take a lot of shit, and you're maybe going to have a mustache, he would be like, that would be fine. And so you could be fooled into thinking like, yes, Gene Hackman was a great movie star, but he kind of just did his thing. And then you'll see something like Get Shorty, one of my favorite Gene Hackman performances ever, where he plays like a quivering buffoon.
Yeah.
Like an absolute idiot, cuck, great character, so funny. And then you're like, shit, Gene Hackman secretly could do anything.
Yeah.
And that is why, yes, there's an argument that he is the greatest actor in Hollywood history. I think there's an argument.
You never hear horrible things about him. He's sort of like he's able. Do you?
Everyone said, and I think he's admitted in the years since he retired and chilled out, he was incredibly difficult.
Oh, okay.
That he was not a friendly man. I'm not using like language to skirt around it, but I feel like even like when they've done Royal Tenenbaum's retrospectives, and that's like his second or third to last movie ever. They all say like he's not pleasant. Like he's very intense and he's angry. Which look is his superpower on screen. Like he is better at harnessing anger.
Oh, he's so good. He's so good. His levels of anger are fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like his sort of growly anger, and I like his like when he gets, upset. It's like when he gets in his red shirt, he goes, "You're not faster than me." Like he gets really up here. Like I just fucking love it.
You are dead right though, Roman, that like the facility in just sort of him understanding the difference between these two characters, this character and the character in Unforgiven, that on paper are very similar. And the differences, the sort of shifts he makes in energy modulation and performance style to fit into each movie and the demands of that narrative properly.
It's totally different. And because I was coming in, so I watched Quick and the Dead and Unforgiven for this.
Oh, wow.
For this little broadcast here. And I was like, because I was going to make the case that they were the same character. And they are not. They are very, very different. And it all comes from the way Gene Hackman plays it, not necessarily how they're written.
It is surprising that he was cast because of what you're just the superficial connection.
Yeah.
On paper, you're like, right. It's the kind of thing where studios are both like, let's just have him play Little Bill again. But also you wonder if that's a deterrent, if audiences are going to be turned off by seeing something they've already seen.
Right. But they're totally different. I mean, it takes a minute to notice it in a way, or you have to really be paying attention to it. The same way I think you have to notice all the incredible things I think Sharon Stone is doing. Like,
agreed.
She's one character at the very beginning. She is playing a character of what if Clint Eastwood was this role, but it's a woman playing it. And then Herod shows up. It freaks her the fuck out so much that every moment after that, she's twitchy. She experiences her trauma all the time. You see it in her face. You see it in the movie. Like, they really train on her reactions in her face. And I think it's brilliant. I think it's a brilliant choice. I think it's a brilliant way that she plays it. And it really is about a person being affected by another person that changes their whole like facade. And I think that the way they interact together is incredibly well done.
I think you see how much you learned from working on those Verhoeven movies about not needing to be realistic, right? Mm-hmm. Or naturalistic in her performances, that she can do something more expressionistic to better suit the tone, the mood, the genre, to sort of make bigger statements, because so much of her character is this sort of, I mean, this entire movie comes out of this, like, if you were to just have the man with no name be a woman, how does that change the dynamic of every scene, right?
Right.
And so she's playing with that very consciously, of when she needs to play the emotions of the character, when she needs to play the iconography of what she's representing. And it's like really impressive work. And Hackman is able to make this entirely different character from Little Bill, despite not doing any obvious actory things. It's not like he said, I want a prosthetic nose and a mustache so the character's different. I'm going to do a different voice. I'm going to come up with some tick to make him really unique. It's just emotional modulation and knowing exactly what movie he's in and what role he needs to serve within that story.
You guys know Hackman lived with like Dustin Hoffman and
Duvall,
who's the other
right?
Duvall, right back in the day in New York.
The original Pussy Posse, yeah.
But like, imagine living with him. Even young Hackman, like who's maybe has less gravitas.
Yeah.
Or what, and like you ate his cheese out of the fridge, or like, just imagine like having roommate conversations with him. It chills me to my bones.
Yes.
Like trying to ask him to do the dishes. Like,
yeah, exactly. Like, Gene, when you come home at night, can you not slam the door? It's waking me up. Like, whatever.
I mean, the other thing is he always looked like that.
Yeah.
He just like had Gene Hackman face, and he had that voice.
Yeah, young Gene Hackman, it's very, very hard to picture. Obviously, there's sort of like Night Moves Gene Hackman, right? Like sort of like middle Gene Hackman with the stash, where he just looks exactly the same. You look at young Gene Hackman, you're like, yeah, I get it. Like, I get that makes sense.
But he's like he's bulkier in French Connection, which is his big breakout role. And
he's a little sausage. He's with a little hat and a little jacket. Like, he's not a trim guy.
Intimidating. Yeah, that's basically it. He's intimidating. But I think one of the reasons why like I have such reverence for him is because he was never quite that leading man style.
Yeah, he
was able to be the best part in so many movies. While he can be big, he can be smaller. He can just do so much, and I kind of like all of it.
Agreed. He's fascinating because he can selflessly take on a supporting role or a villain role or be a mentor character or whatever it is and be the most interesting part of the movie. And then whenever he was placed at the top of the movie to play the plot driver, he also somehow remained the most interesting person in the movie.
Yeah, exactly.
Like he never collapsed under the weight of that sort of narrative responsibility or needing to be the leading man type or any of that. There's a story, I think I sent this to you and the Doughboys, David. We were texting about how good Hackman is. And I sent you guys that clip of Kevin Costner on the Rich Eisen show talking about Hackman. Did you watch that?
Maybe.
There was whatever thriller the two of them did together, Hackman and Costner, pretty early in Costner's career.
No Way Out.
Yeah.
No Way Out. Yes. So they were talking about on that movie, Costner was coming in pretty hot, right? Like he is a man with a lot of opinions, and he was very ready to be a leading man and a director and all of that. So they're doing all these scenes, and I think he was saying that like most of his scenes with Hackman were in like office rooms behind a desk, and they didn't feel very dynamic. I've never seen this movie, but that he was behind a desk for most of it, and that he got to set and was sort of like, this is boring, we should do this, move this chair, stand up, change the blocking, whatever, and was just being very opinionated with everything. Roger Donaldson was sort of pushing back on him. He was really being stubborn about like, I finally have become a leading man. Like, I don't want to blow it. I don't want to be lazy. I don't want to rest on my laurels. I want to make every scene as dynamic as I can. This is Gene Hackman. This is one of my idols. And Hackman was just sitting there like silently the entire time as these fights were happening, and then would just wait for them to settle and would do whatever they landed on, right? And at the end of the day, and Costner was like, I don't know if I pissed him off. I don't know what's going on here. And at the end of the day, Hackman stops him when he's like walking out of his trailer to get to his car. And he goes like, hey, kid. And Kevin Costner was like, Gene Hackman's about to chew me out. Like, is terrified of Gene Hackman, even at peak physical Kevin Costner, right? And it's just like, this guy's going to fucking destroy me. And Costner goes up to him and he's like, you know, I had a bad divorce and I had to take some movies I didn't really want to do and pay my settlement. I think I sort of forgot what I like about doing this. And watching you today fight for that, it reminded me of when I was a young actor and I cared about every single choice. So thank you for that.
Wow.
And he like
cool.
walked off. And then Hackman has like a golden period right after that.
Huh.
Yeah, it's true. He passes you're right. He like reignites the torch. Sorry.
Yeah.
It's like when Hackman, because I feel like why Hackman won an Oscar for Unforgiven. I mean, obviously he's really good in Unforgiven.
Mm-hmm.
It's a perfect supporting actor, but it was also kind of the Oscars being like, you still got the juice, buddy, like, or whatever, you know, like it's that rediscovery thing. Yeah.
I mean, I think his 80s were not particularly great outside of Hoosiers. And Costner says that Hoosiers, I think, came out when they were shooting No Way Out.
Yes. Right.
And Hackman was like, I got to be honest, I didn't know what we had. I thought that was a piece of shit, and I didn't think I was giving it my all.
He's
and
incredible in Hoosiers, but it's obviously a very quiet internal performance. Yes.
But Hackman, by his own admission, was like, I feel guilty by how much I wasn't respecting that movie and appreciating it while we were making it.
I feel like he did a lot of stuff for money, right? Like he's in Superman 4. That's kind of embarrassing. He's in a lot of shit. God,
well, like Uncommon Valor was a movie that was like a hit but wasn't respected. Like he did a lot of, in the 80s, this was what he was saying. He had like a bad divorce and he did a lot of movies for money.
And it's not like in the 90s he did all gems. Like he did a lot of, but I mean, God, this year he has Quick and the Dead, Crimson Tide, and Get Shorty. Is his 95.
Well, I just feel like even though he's in movies that don't turn out to be great, he always comported himself well. Where like I don't think this stink of a bad movie ever really stuck to him, which is part of the grace of not being a Dustin Hoffman or a Robert De Niro or like that. He gets to be good in things and be respected, but I don't know, like he doesn't take. I don't remember him in those bad movies.
No, and I also think, I mean, David, we've talked about like the Tommy Lee Jones phenomenon, where Tommy Lee Jones is another actor whose superpower is like anger, right? And so when he's giving
simmering anger,
right, and like disgust and distaste for everything around him. When he's giving a movie his all, he's incredible. And when he hates that he's in a movie, he's incredible because his actual disregard for the movie around him translates. So I think like whatever period where Gene Hackman's heart was maybe in it a little less, the performances were still really fucking compelling. And then I think in the 90s, he started just being like, putting his heart fully back into everything. And then, yes, even when he was taking paycheck jobs, he's like over delivering on all of it. God, he's so good.
He is good. The Quick and the Dead is good. This film is directed by Sam Raimi.
and boy, was it directed.
It really was.
Directed the shit out of this.
I love Sam Raimi. And I love this movie, and I love how he directed it. But it is that kind of thing like when I was 12 years old and I was trying to understand, what is a director? How can I watch a film and understand how it was directed? This would be a good entry level where you're like, did you notice there were a few subtle choices in terms of how the story was told?
Yeah.
That's sort of Sam Raimi's fingers his little fingerprints
Right.
that you're noticing here, right? You know,
Right.
like,
Do you notice that gun floating across the screen for no reason? That's a very Sam Raimi move right there.
You watch this movie, you're like, was he the only guy who watched the Man with No Name trilogy and during all the shootouts and standoffs was like, come on, let's throw some juice in here.
not enough stuff happening.
Right.
I love it. I think
so
it's
good.
like it's weird that Western, which is often kind of an excuse to kind of have a movie do nothing except for just have vistas being on display, that he takes that and just like pours Sam Raimi-ness into it in a way that is like I find so compelling. Like I really love it. It's just like I would never put it together that these like succession of shootouts is the perfect use of his superpower, but it totally is. It's just a video game of like
Yes.
of a boss level, like like continued like series of boss level fights that allow him to like do canted angle that just flips all the way over, or the jaws like pullback angle sort of thing, and he just does and every single fight is different. He's like, it's so good.
It is
so
that
good.
thing. He uses every tool in the toolbox. He doesn't repeat himself. And the other thing with him is for how loud his directing style is. I don't think there's a single thing in this movie that is like flash or style for its own sake.
I agree.
Like every choice he makes, as loud as it is in support of trying to convey the emotion of that moment with the most sort of extreme amount of energy, which for a film that is very, very clean and simple and straightforward plot-wise, it does help a lot.
I totally agree. And I think that also the emotion stays with it. I mean, there's some key emotional moments that are played sincerely, and you feel them sincerely. They are not a joke. And it's a really delicate balance to strike. And he does it, I think, throughout this movie, which is why I think one of the reasons why I think it's a real triumph.
I agree with everything you guys are saying, but I think that at the time, critics did not agree.
No,
least.
absolutely.
Or the popular reaction was, this movie is all flash, it's all sizzle, no steak, and I'm not getting any emotion, and Sam Raimi can't fucking calm down, right? Like that was the hit at the time.
Well, also all the Westerns you're talking about in this sort of like 90s, late 80s, 90s wave, right? That is dying at this moment. All of them are like very austere. They
By
are
and large.
prestige, adult, revisionist Westerns, by and large, that have like a simplicity to their filmmaking style. And this is a popcorn movie.
Right. I would say Tombstone is the trashiest of those 90s Westerns. It's not nearly as sort of fizzy as this movie, but Tombstone,
Yes.
obviously, definitely a little less austere. And then City Slickers was not the most austere work, but of course, I'm joking when I include City Slickers in all this.
But truly, City Slickers is more austere cinematically than this is. Like City Slickers
Yes,
is
it
very
is.
saccharine.
Yes,
I would say that most
you
things are
right.
more austere than
That's the thing. It's a low bar, but yes,
Yes.
it absolutely is. So Quick and the Dead, even though it has actors from Unforgiven and it has like the aesthetics, the look, not the way the camera's moving, but the frontier town and the costumes and all that would feel very recognizable. Yes, it is aesthetically completely different from all the other Westerns people are seeing. So maybe that threw people off, like too goofy.
I'm looking at Gene Hackman here. I forgot that in between Unforgiven and Quick of the Dead, he is also in Wyatt Earp and Geronimo.
Yeah.
He's in two of
he-
the other movies we've mentioned
he would sign
in this
on.
run. Yeah.
He would sign on. He still liked money.
Yes,
God,
he
he's-
loved it.
I remember this being a flop or being a sort of critical flop as
It was fun.
completely confounding to me. Like, because I saw it and I just like, well, that's one of the greatest movies I've seen this year. And I mean, I think that the other thing that was going on is like you're kind of in the Pulp Fiction, ironic. This is a pastiche in an interesting way of Sergio Leone. But it's also not ironic. It's not mean.
It's not ironic.
Spirited.
No.
It's not. It has a real sincerity to it that I think also short-circuited the kind of cinephile reaction to it too. Like it didn't get embraced by any group of of moviegoers at the time, and I don't know why it was just a big fat meatball for me.
Yeah. It was a February release. Like, I feel like that's kind of a weird dumping from Sony, and like the whole thing is just kind of neither. It's like, well, this is an expensive movie with movie stars. Is it a prestige project? No. Is it for families? Definitely not. Oh, okay. Like the options are kind of narrowing. Its only award nomination is a Saturn Award for Best Actress. That's it.
For her. Wow. From Dusk Till Dawn is the year after this. And that's what you're talking about, Roman. Like, that's the Western that is now speaking to the post-Tarantino generation by being written by Tarantino, starring Tarantino, and 30 minutes in being like, just kidding, we're not a Western.
Right.
I mean,
right.
and to be clear, I adore that movie.
Same.
But right.
Yeah,
the whole
totally.
joke
It's great.
of that movie is that it stops being a Western, and it's, right. Anyway, The Quick and the Dead. Let me give you guys some context, okay?
Please.
All right. So this film's written by Simon Moore, who at the time is best known for the TV miniseries Traffic with a K.
How would
Which,
you
of course-
know that? Traffic is spelled with an IC in the United
Right,
States of
but then-
America, where we all have lived our entire lives.
In 1989, there was a British miniseries for Channel 4 in it called Traffic. Which
Are you
is
talking like that, David?
Yeah, this is very
which
odd.
It doesn't sound right, actually.
No.
Yeah.
famously turned into the film Traffic by Steven Soderbergh many years later. I'm assuming none of you have ever seen it. I have never seen the film. The miniseries. Sorry,
I've not seen the
film.
miniseries. Yeah.
Well, David, how would we have seen it? I don't think it
Yeah, it's
aired in the United
impossible to see.
States until
It
the
actually-
mid-2000s.
No, it aired on Masterpiece Theater in 1990. It was a very big deal.
Well, how would you know that?
I'm reading Wikipedia. I've never seen Traffic,
Mm.
despite having lived in England for
I feel like we're
many,
getting
many
very
years.
close to something.
I said it.
What?
No, it's funny when you look at Traffic, because obviously the Soderbergh movie was about the cartels, right, and all that. It was about Mexican drug dealing and so on and so forth. But the British movie was about heroin dealers, I think, and it was about like Afghan and Pakistani growers and all that, right? Like it's funny how it got transposed. Anyway, that thing was a big deal. So I guess Simon Moore gets kind of brought out to Hollywood, where it's like, okay, buddy, what do you got? And he had written a movie called Under Suspicion.
He writes
that
and
got
directs
turned
that,
into a
right?
movie, right?
Yeah.
Did he direct it as well?
He did direct it.
Which I've never seen. Hilariously, of course, Gene Hackman later starred in a different film called Under Suspicion. That is not what we're talking about. We're talking about the Liam Neeson, Laura San Giacomo, like kind of sex thriller, which I've never seen.
It is funny sometimes when you like troll through IMDb like that and you find a movie where it just feels like four things pulled out of a hat. You're like, what
Yeah.
if we try? And you're slapping magnets on the board and you're like, Liam Neeson fucks Laura San Giacomo? Is that a movie?
Yeah, right. It just sort of sounds like something that would have happened in 1991. Like, what are you going to check?
Yeah.
Like, that sounds fine.
What do we call it? I don't know. Under Suspicion or something?
So Simon Moore basically is like, I loved spaghetti westerns. I loved the, Sergio Leone style western. I loved the Mexican standoffs. And I was just like, what if there was a movie that was all that?
Cool.
All the things
We
I
cut
like.
everything else out, and it's just shootout after shootout.
The Princess Bride effect. The kind of take all the good stuff.
So smart.
It is quite smart. And he wanted to do it spaghetti western style. He was going to direct it himself. He was going to like go out to Italy, try and get like $4 million, right?
Mhm.
From some studio. And basically what happened was eventually Sony, who had turned down the idea of the movie with him directing, calls him and they're like, we'll buy it for a lot of money. Like, we will, turn it all around. And he truly, like, I think he didn't even know what script they were talking about because he was so confused. Like, I guess he had several scripts out. And then, like, the way he puts it is like, it was a Frank Capra moment where where he was like, I'm never going to have any success. I'm always going to be poor. And he got the phone call and like, that was it. It was like all the money in the world. And he was suddenly like, his whole life changed or whatever.
Now, was that because Sharon Stone had found the script? Was Sony buying it to try to lure Sharon Stone, or did Sharon Stone ask Sony to buy it?
Yes. Basically, I think and it sounds like classic Hollywood stuff, which is like, Sony calls him and they're like, we want the script. We'll pay top dollar. And he's like, what do you want to do with it? And he's like, we can't tell you. Sony's like, we won't reveal any of that. And then eventually they are like, so yes, this is going to be a star vehicle for Sharon Stone and she wants Sam Raimi to direct it. And Simon Moore was like, wait, that sounds great. I love Sam Raimi. Like, I think like they maybe assumed that he would be like, Sam Raimi, like, forget that. And he was like,
Sharon Stone.
Like, yeah. And he did the rewrites. Like, it's like basically they never took the script away. Like, oh no, I'm sorry. No,
yes,
they did eventually take the
there's
script
the John
away.
Sayles thing, right?
Yeah, right. For a while, he's working on it for them, and then one day they fired him and they brought in John Sayles, and he beefed up the script to a 2.5-hour movie. Jesus.
Well, it's so funny that you mentioned Lone Star, which is John Sayles written and directed, that came out at the same time, which is almost like if you could have a polar opposite Western from Quick and the Dead, it's probably Lone Star, which is a movie I fucking adore. Like,
that movie is fantastic.
Phenomenal.
But certainly it is not
it's not the Quick and the Dead.
Blockbuster tinged. Right, exactly.
No,
it is a slow and interesting film.
And what's interesting about it, from the way I read it, is that I think they brought in Sayles because they were like, this thing might be a little too popcorny. Can he add some like serious Western gravitas to it? Right. And then he does that by adding an hour onto the runtime, which they're like, this thing is overblown now. So then they bring Moore back to rewrite Sayles' draft. And what he did was just took out all the Sayles stuff and they went, great, you fixed it. So he was like, essentially what they made was the first script from before they fired me.
What a waste.
But, I mean, it is like, Griffin, you and I have heard stories like this.
Absolutely.
About Hollywood production where they ruin a script trying to fix it and then like turn back around and they're like, hey, can you fix it? And the answer isn't, hey, can we go back to your original draft? It's, hey, could you come back and change your script so that we like it again? Like, they can never admit the mistake enough that they're actually like, you know what, let's go to draft 8 instead of draft 47. Draft 8 was actually when it was good. Like, they just have to keep going. Right?
They feel like it has to be an additive process. And especially in this day and age, you can just be like, go to my email from February. There's a draft that is dated. There's a story I remember hearing about a uncredited writer who I think he was uncredited, did rewrites on the first Tim Story Fantastic Four movie, and Jessica Alba kept on coming in with notes every day about her character not making sense.
Yeah, because Invisible Woman doesn't make the most sense in the world, but okay.
But they were just sort of like, this whole movie doesn't make sense. This is like chaos. Like, what are you talking? She come every day and have so many notes on the scene, this and that. I want this and I want more of that. And at some point, this writer just cut like 90% of her dialogue out. And was like, because the studio was just sort of like, she's becoming like a nightmare. We just like can't solve this. And she's holding everything up. Can you just like cut her dialogue down so she's got as little to do in every scene as possible? And he comes to set the next day. He's like terrified that Jessica Alba's going to chew him out. She runs up to him, gives him a kiss and a hug. And she's like, finally, someone cracked my character.
Not present.
All they did was just remove.
Wow.
Look, I'll say this as someone who writes professionally for a living. Sometimes, you'll turn in a story and it'll be like, I want this, 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 and this. And you'll like make one change and they'll be like, yeah, I love it. It looks great. Like, it's sometimes it's totally. Just some weird vibe thing. It's so bizarre. I don't know.
It is a mystery of editing. I edit for most of my life is focused around editing. And it is weird how much of it is like, we work on it. And the answer is, let's just cut that completely.
Yeah.
Simon Moore here says that a specific concern the studio had was the repetitive nature of the movie. Like, it's just gunfight after gunfight. Isn't this going to be boring?
But Raimi solves that.
Yeah, like I guess I understand that concern in theory, but like
is Mortal Kombat boring? No. We love it. Street Fighter boring? No, you motherfuckers.
I mean, I think something that's very important is that you make every character, even if they're a little character, really pop.
Huge.
If it was just a bunch of anonymous villains who are getting shot off the screen because Sharon Stone is not going to die until, then sure, maybe that would be an issue. But Sam Raimi's like, no, there will not be one face that you do not remember in this movie.
Yeah. It reminds me, it's sort of like when we make radio, which is my only context for this, I don't do anything visual at all, is like if you can read a script and it functions the same as the audio product, then you didn't actually make radio.
Sure.
You shouldn't be able to read it and have it be the same. And so if you read it, and that's what is added with all the visuals and all the tricks and all the cool things with it. It's just like they made a true movie, because if you read the script of it, you'd be like, well, that's dumb. Like that doesn't do enough. But it shouldn't.
Yeah. Not only does he have sort of unique visual ideas for each gunfight, and are those ideas uniquely paired to each gunfight, not arbitrarily applied for the sake of variety, right? But also, as you sort of said, David, it's like, we got to get through a lot of characters fast. How do you characterize them fast? How do you cast great character actors? People that
this guy has a scar.
Right, will be
and
remembered.
His name is Scar.
How do you style them specifically? Like, all of this shit. It truly is, though. Like, I've been listening to so much Dead Eyes, our friend Connor Ratliff's podcast, and so much of that is talking about the weird, when he talks to all these other actors, when you lose parts or gain parts, or how people gain parts, and the weird eccentricities of casting. And part of it is like a movie like this where Sam Raimi has to make sure that every person looks distinctive, right?
Yeah.
Has a different voice, has a different name, has a different gimmick. Is it an actor who we all know, so we got the shorthand of that's Keith David? Or is it a guy who you make like be named Ratsby and you kind of give him fucking rap prosthetics?
Or like Ace in his cards. And it is so Mike Tyson's Punch Out. That, like, I'm 10 years older than you, so my video game references are slightly older.
That's a good reference.
But it's like, it's very much just like, this is the guy that does flamenco dancing, and so he has the name flamenco in his name. Like, it's just, it's right. It's one for one.
But it's a very smart understanding of what the audience is going to need to hold on to in order to be able to stick with this movie.
Yeah.
Because when it starts, it's like, wow, you're introducing a lot of characters in the first 5 minutes,
Yeah. How do
I
keep track of this? Right.
What complicated
on a
spider
chalkboard
web
is how you
narrative.
keep track of them.
Right. And then you're just like, yeah, they're all going to be on a chalkboard. We're just introducing them all now, and then there's going to be a tournament one by one. They'll all get shot down.
So Sharon Stone, as we said, is the producer of this movie along with the star. She picks this movie because she likes the role that's been written here. It's unusual. She likes the idea of a woman with no name, right?
Mm-hmm.
She had, I guess, been mogul enough on Sliver and said that she like rolled over a lot there, like she was trying not to step on toes or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And that movie, didn't do amazing. I mean, Sliver's sort of like a trash masterpiece, I guess, of the early 90s, but it's not like a well-received film.
No, and was certainly, not well-respected.
So this is her, like, I am putting my foot down, like, movie, right? Like, this is where she has she's calling the shots, and she's like, I'm not fucking this around. Like, just because you, like, a big thing she cites is that some people, quote, who shall remain nameless, wanted her to wear a dress when she rides into town. And she was just like, we're not doing that. I am not going to be sexy in like whatever way, whatever normal way you think for this movie. They actually shot a sex scene that got removed.
With her and Crow?
I must have been. It's not clear. It's not cited.
Yeah.
Where would
Court,
that
probably.
have happened?
Yeah.
Like outside?
Yeah.
Where he's chained up to the fountain.
Yeah. Wait, is that where it went down?
And of course, she got to pick her director. And she picks Sam Raimi. And it's sort of a weird thing because Sam Raimi, I don't think, has ever directed a movie at this point that he didn't write, right? Like, this is his first kind of for-hire job.
Correct. And the main thing I read that she hired him off of was Army of Darkness. She
loved
the
Army
one.
of Darkness.
Yeah.
Right. And like Sam Raimi, not only, this is the thing, had basically never worked with a big actor before. Because like Liam Neeson in Darkman is not like that famous at that point.
No, it's pre fucking Schindler's List. Like, this is the first time he's working with established movie stars.
And then everything else is like literally his friends. Like, you know.
It's almost what's most impressive to me about this movie is that like Crime Wave was obviously such a sort of knockback for him, but how well he transitions to like new budget level, working with established movie stars in a new genre, in a studio system with a script he didn't develop. And it's just seamless. It feels as personal as any of his earlier films, and it feels as of a piece.
Bruce Campbell, I think, does actually have a tiny role in this movie, but Raimi wanted him to have a bigger role. One of the gunfighters, obviously, but he was shooting Briscoe County Jr., so he was unavailable.
That's a good reason, at least. Yeah,
it is a good reason.
But he should have been one of these guys.
He absolutely. I mean, any one of these roles is made for him, basically. And he's very nice in that kind of Raimi way, where he's like, "This is Simon Moore's thing. Like, it's a great script. 90% of it is him. Like, good job by him. I just wanted to do a good job, like, putting it on screen." Like, I think he, as someone who had never directed another person's script before, was very deferential to the script.
What a mensch.
He is a bit of a mensch. He had a good time working with Sharon Stone. Guess who he had a tougher time working with?
Gene Hackman.
That's correct. Things were a little difficult. He says Gene, very strict. Reminded me of an elementary school principal teacher called Mr. Little. Sounds kind of cool, actually. He was shooting Geronimo. Sam Raimi goes to meet him, and he says, "Sam, tell me about the picture." At that point, I would shoot myself and piss my pants. If Gene Hackman just said, "Tell me about the picture," I would be like, "No, I won't. I will commit suicide in front of you."
By the way, he said that with a gun, a loaded gun cocked to Sam Raimi's temple. Tell me about the picture, Sam.
So Sam says he talked for about 15 minutes, and he was kind of just like, And then Hackman says, "Tell me about my character, Herod. Does he love the kid or not?" Talking about DiCaprio.
Yeah.
And Sam Raimi's like, "Well, of course he does. That's why he's so mean to him all the time." And Gene Hackman apparently nods and goes like, And then there's no further discussion, because then he accepts the part. But I guess like that was Gene Hackman's sort of weird test, was like, do you understand this character in the way I want you to, or something?
Do you know that Brian Cox Succession thing? Either of you?
He plays. I know he plays the role of Logan Roy on Succession. Is that
he
what you're
does.
talking
Okay,
about?
that's what I was asking. It's a little trivia fact I found on IMDb. I didn't know if you know. No, what's Jesse Armstrong, when he was I get maybe he had taken the part already. They were meeting with him. They hadn't started filming though, right? And he said to Jesse Armstrong, like, "I just have the one question for you. I can do all my work. I'm not going to pester you with shit. The one question I just need to know before I can play this part. And either answer's fine, but I need to know what your definitive answer is. Does he actually love the kids or not?"
Right.
And I wonder how much the Hackman thing was like a test versus him being that kind of very practical actor where he's like, "I just need you to tell me which it is. And I can tell you whether or not I can get my head around playing this guy."
I do get the sense that, right, Brian Cox is a fairly practical actor. In a way, because obviously he does a lot of weird crap. Like, so,
right.
I mean, no offense to him. Because my favorite thing, I mean, I haven't read the Brian Cox book yet. I'm going to, but obviously, everyone's heard that book is him being like, and Jeremy Irons, what a hack! I hate him, and here's 10 paragraphs and all the shit he's been in. And it's like, Brian Cox, you've done like 40 movies that no one's ever heard of that are like, you yelling at Gary Oldman on a submarine, and then you walk off with money in bags. They didn't even they forgot to cut that out of the movie. Like you're handed some like aluminum that you can go, barter with. It's just weird that Brian Cox is such a hack and yet also so comfortable calling everyone out. And I love him, to be clear.
The last chapter of the book, by the way, David, because you said you haven't read it yet.
I haven't read it yet.
The last chapter of that book is him calling you out for not having read the book yet.
He knows.
He knows.
Classic.
So he's sitting
Classic
around
Brian
doing
Cox.
fucking podcasts. Read my book, goddammit.
Fuck off.
Fuck off,
Anyway.
Sims.
So Gene Hackman, this may stun you guys to hear, was not super into Sam Raimi's style of filmmaking.
Very technical, complicated setups, many takes.
Yes. As he says, he cuts the film in the camera to some degree, meaning that he never lets a master scene run through. So I guess that's Hackman saying, like, why don't you just point the camera at me and let me be Gene fucking Hackman? And Sam Raimi's like, no, I want to do this, and then I want to do this, and then, and it has to be exactly this way, or else the studio's gonna not let me do it, right? So I'm sure he got on his nerves. Yes,
it is a reason why I think. Look, I don't know what his technique is with actors by and large, but I do think Sam Raimi doesn't get enough credit for how good the performances are in his movies, considering how difficult his style of filmmaking is for performances.
Mm-hmm.
And I think part of that is he casts very well. And even if he wasn't getting along well with Hackman is so fucking good in this. And especially, we'll get to it, but the moment after the shootout with the kid, he plays that in such a fascinating way. That's not Hackman like pulling a scene off of the shelf that he's done before, Yeah,
I mean, that scene is the best scene in the movie, I think. And there's a lot of good scenes in this movie.
Can I read this thing? You were talking about, David, the terror of imagining living with Gene Hackman as a struggling actor.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm just on his Wikipedia. So one of his main jobs at that period of time living with Hoffman and Duvall was that he worked at the Howard Johnson in Times Square. So if you think it's scary to be his roommate, imagine having to order ice cream from Gene Hackman at a fucking diner. But he one of the people he served at that restaurant was previously one of his instructors at the Pasadena Playhouse, who said that him working at Howard Johnson was proof that he wouldn't amount to anything.
Damn. Wow.
Jesus.
Yes. And then Marine, he had been a Marine. He enlisted in the Marines when he was 16 years old. He lied about his age.
Well, so he probably looked 47.
Absolutely.
I don't think he had to lie.
Yeah, he's 24 in this movie. But he lied about his age at 16 to enlist in the Marine Corps for 4 years as a field radio operator, right? So he's had this Pasadena Playhouse guy tell him you're not going to amount to anything. And then a year or two later, he's working as a doorman, and the former Marine officer, his former commanding Marine officer, said, "Hackman, you're a sorry son of a bitch." And there's this quote from Hackman here where he talks about how much everyone dismissed him at that time. And he said, "It was more psychological warfare because I wasn't going to let those fuckers get me down. I insisted with myself that I would continue to do whatever it took to get a job. It was like me against them. And in some way, unfortunately, I still feel that way. But I think if you're really interested in acting, there is a part of you that relishes the struggle. It's a narcotic in the way that you were trained to do this work and nobody will let you do it. So you're a little bit nuts. You lie to people, you cheat, you do whatever it takes to get an audition, you get a job." It does feel like that is the energy Gene Hackman carried with him throughout his entire career until he retired. Like he was just sort of adversarial to everyone he worked with. Not like abusive, you know?
That's what I think when I was thinking that I hadn't heard much bad about him is like it never went to the level of abuse. It seems like he's the typical kind of artist style scare. Yeah.
He was just constantly locking horns with everyone all the time.
Yeah.
And it's one of the reasons he's like, when the rare times he does interviews, been very clear on why he doesn't want to come out of retirement. He's like, I'm a lot happier now. I finally let go of all that shit.
Yeah. Is this the movie where Raimi kind of puts on the suit and does stuff like this? Is this him trying to like I wear fancy clothes to basically as my armor and my costume.
Yeah. Confidence. I get it,
And heretofore, he had been, like you said, just mainly working with his friends, and maybe that wasn't required. But like, do you know when he made that transition to kind of wearing a suit all the time?
I don't, although I know, of course, that is his on-set vibe, right? He dresses up, right, Griff?
Yeah, I would not be surprised if this was the moment, and if it isn't, it still does feel like this is the moment where symbolically the shift happens.
Well, that's what I like. My psychology is this is the moment I would dress up if I was asking Gene Hackman to sit there while I rearrange the cameras. Would be the moment when I would be sure I was wearing a suit when I asked him respectfully to do this.
JJ, our researcher, found this. He posted this on Twitter recently. I imagine it was in doing research for the show, but I don't know what specific episode. Did you see this quote, David?
Which one?
I don't know where this interview is from, but they said to Raimi, he just did the screen grab of this question and answer. You always wear a suit on set. Rumor says it's a nod to Hitchcock. And he said, although I have a tremendous amount of respect for Alfred Hitchcock, who is the true master of horror and the father of such modern filmmaking technique, I don't actually wear a suit as a tribute to him. Believe it or not, I wear a suit and tie as a sign of respect to the cast and crew. I like a very serious and well-ordered film set. For me, it's the best way to work, and out of that order, I like to get a tremendous amount of creativity. And at the same time, the old masters used to dress in a very formal manner on set, and I always thought it was super cool. And then in a line that might have been ghostwritten by my father, the end of this answer is Sam Raimi saying, nowadays, everyone's got the nose rings and the colored hair. So for me, to wear the suit and tie is a different way to go.
Sam Raimi's not here for the nose rings.
My father always talks about the Mohawk hairdo and only refers to it by that full name.
The definite article. Look,
the Mohawk hairdo and the thing in the nose is what my dad always says.
I mean, there's this story that Bruce Campbell relates, because I feel like Sam Raimi doesn't talk a lot of shit, right? Like Sam Raimi strikes me as someone who's not going to be
a
like
gentleman.
Gene Hackman was a huge pain in the ass, but apparently Sam had a very specific setup. He wanted Gene to do 6 different things, and Gene looked at him and said, I'm not doing any of that. and Sam had to talk to him for like 15 minutes about the character to be like, this is why I want you to tip your hat, to sit in the chair, to say this line, he had to like talk him all the way through it, because clearly Gene Hackman was like, I'm not your action figure, you fucker, right? Or whatever it is.
Right.
Like,
but like with Campbell was his action figure. He had this big goofy friend who was also a producer who was down for anything, and he could just manipulate into a billion takes by himself. It's just, I just think every single performance in this movie is good. And he gets people at very different stages in their careers.
Well, speaking of, when are we going to talk about Russell Crowe? Because this is his first American movie. Yeah.
I'm about to pivot to Russell Crowe, who, I mean, I feel like I've lavished some praise on Russell Crowe on this
You're
podcast,
a fan.
Griffin.
Yes.
Have we covered a lot of Russell Crowe films?
Insider,
obviously, a really compelling, wonderful performance.
But is there another one? That's a good question. I feel like we talk about him a lot. We're obviously developing a live-action Donkey Kong movie with him, but that might be the only proper Russell Crowe film we've covered.
Well, in addition to Raimi, the thing I was most excited about when it came to this movie was Russell Crowe, because I had seen him in Australian movies.
Did you see Romper Stomper? That was
I saw Romper Stomper, which was a big deal. And but this other movie, another one that I hope people find and love, is this movie called Proof from 1991.
Proof is a wonderful film.
Yes.
A Jocelyn Moorhouse film.
It is so good, and he plays just a dude that is not very notable in any way, except for he is so charismatic that he makes this very ordinary guy very compelling. And between that and Romper Stomper, I was like, this is the guy. I was super convinced on him really early on.
Well, guess who else was convinced?
Sharon Stone?
Sharon Stone.
Fucking good ass taste.
Because guess who Sam Raimi wanted for this role?
Oh, I don't know.
Liam Neeson, who he had just worked with, obviously.
Yeah, that
now,
makes sense.
at this point, Liam Neeson is coming off of Schindler's List. I don't know if Liam Neeson would want to do this. He would make total sense for it. Like, he's a big, imposing. But Sharon Stone had seen Romper Stomper. She thought he was charismatic, attractive, talented, not talentless.
I was going to say, what a neg.
Talented and fearless, which I do feel like is fairly crucial. Crowe had auditioned for a small role. He'd auditioned for one of the, many gunslingers, I guess. And Sharon Stone basically was like, you have to audition for the lead role for Court. And I basically talked Sam Raimi into it. And this is probably not even a top 10 Russell Crowe performance. He's given a lot of wonderful performances, but he
really
is
fucking
magnificent in this movie. And he is so hot. It is crazy how good he looks.
I think it's one of his best.
I agree, Roman.
Maybe it is.
It's sort of like his subtlety that his bluster that sort of comes on later is like is the part of Russell Crowe I don't enjoy as much. You know what I mean?
He can bluster me all over the room.
He can throw a fucking phone at your head.
But his ability to play gentle and tough and kind of an addict and kind of like he's basically a violence addict that's recovering, and for him to do that and be this might be my favorite role of his ever.
That's the thing. Obviously, look, I'm
that's
notorious.
outrageous and disgusting.
Listen, David.
No, go ahead.
I may be a notorious soft boy.
Sure.
And I don't want to fucking become Eddie Redmayne here, but I do think there is a fragility in this performance that I don't know I've ever seen Crowe capture as well. And the way that is cut with his natural sort of brutish animalistic intensity is really fascinating. I don't think he is ever called upon to pull up this same amount of energy, the same kind of energy, rather.
It's a different energy. And also, like, when you capture him here, and something that you get is this infinite possibilities with him. You just see all the movie stars he could possibly be. And just over time, you watch them narrow and those walls close off, and he chooses a path and he becomes more of a Russell Crowe as a person. And in this one, I just see this amazing performance and this infinite potential, and it sort of delights me when I see it. It's so good.
I'm regretting the top 10 comment. I think I might revise it to a top 5 because I'm just looking at his filmography right now. Because my favorite Russell Crowe performance is not Mastering Commander.
Oh, what?
That's probably my favorite Russell Crowe movie. That's probably what. But L.A. Confidential is my favorite Russell Crowe performance. That's like one of my favorite performances of all time.
Yeah. And that's right after this, right?
Yeah, it's 2 years later.
Virtuosity.
Okay, yeah.
And
it's
then
basically
LA Confidential.
Right. It's basically his next performance in a serious movie, because God bless Virtuosity, which is a very bananas piece of 90s, Hollywood crap. And he is really good at it. And he's like, he pops really hard at it, but that's not like a real serious movie or whatever. So LA Confidential.
Wait, this looks good.
Virtuosity?
You haven't seen
Sid
Virtuosity?
6.7, the ultimate killing machine?
Correct.
Fuck
he is
me.
a VR
No.
amalgam of every serial killer, Ben.
Ben, do you know what SID stands for?
No.
Sadistic, intelligent, dangerous.
Fuck
right.
me.
That
All
movie
right,
is-
wait. I gotta get my hands
bizarre.
on this shit. Damn.
I'll bring it over,
That's-
Ben. I've got it on Blu-ray. I'll bring it to you sometime.
Perfect.
That's another movie I saw in the theater. I was very excited for that movie. But
Why
You were,
wouldn't
like,
you be? You're
all
Crow
in on
pills.
Crow. Yeah.
Yeah. Look, Bud White is my favorite Crow performance ever. That's one of my favorite characters ever. I love that movie.
And that is true. I would put maybe that one is higher than this one, but I just find this one so he just has a different type of appeal
it's amazing.
And that I find it really stunning.
What's interesting, I mean, you saying, Roman, the thing about like you see all the different ways he could have gone. In this, you see how he could have become a little more like Liam Neeson. Like, I think Liam Neeson probably had a little too much gravitas to pull this off at this point, and also was probably a little too known and is a little bit too much of a physical presence. There's something about the fact that Russell Crowe in this movie still, even watching it from a modern perspective, you can't really tell if that violence is inside of him or not. There's an actual tension to how much this guy seems to be fighting this stuff.
Totally.
Can I fill out my top 5? I'm now thinking about this. I think it's LA Confidential. I do think I would put Master and Commander second. That performance is so beautiful. Then I guess I would have The Insider. Those are sort of, right, that's kind of like your holy trinity of Crowe. And then you guys are talking about tenderness. Like the movie is, I don't like the movie that much.
I know what you're going to say.
I do think his performance in A Beautiful Mind is like that. Is tapping into that.
You know what?
Did you think I was going to say that? No.
I thought you were going to say Boy Erased.
Boy Erased is look, we talked about it. It's I like that performance. That movie did very little for me.
Yes.
He looks so strange in that movie that it's almost off-putting. As you said, his eyeballs are fat. Like, it's just. Do you remember that line, Griffin?
No, I do. It haunts me in my sleep. Yeah.
Nice Guys is a sort of underrated Crow that people forget about.
Yes.
That's a really great performance.
Great.
obviously Gladiator is a movie star performance like no other. Like that, that shit is for real.
I like Gladiator and Master Commander less than you. Rude, I know. I'm
with you. I like Master and Commander better. I did not like Gladiator when I saw it in the
doesn't
theater.
do anything
It did nothing for me.
And I've given it a few more tries since then. Doesn't work for me.
It's kind of the point where I kind of got off the Russell Crowe train. Like
that's when people got on. That's when the train.
I know
was
that's what's it's so weird.
People
like
on the roof.
And I would take him or leave him in certain places. Like I think for example, Nice Guys I think is like the perfect use of him in a certain way.
He's so good in that, right?
And but he never like sold a movie for me the same way again after Gladiator.
No,
basically.
I think for me, I probably say Insider's the best performance, and then I think this, LA Confidential, Nice Guys, and I'm trying to think what my fifth would be.
Well, I mean, there's some others good Crow performances for not shutting out. 3:10 to Yuma, he is actually fantastic in that.
He is fantastic in that. Yeah.
I think he's good in Man of Steel. That I wouldn't call that but he's very good. He's a lot of fun. He played two characters in a little film called The Mummy, Dr. Jekyll, and wait a second, what's this? It's coming into focus.
Hold on.
Adjusting Mr. Hyde? What?
David is holding a jeweler's loop up to his computer screen.
I love Russell Crowe. And then absolutely, Romper Stomper is an incredible performance. If anyone has not seen that film, Proof is a really good movie. That Hugo Weaving is also in that film, and he's also really good.
That's a gem that people should find. Yeah. And it's another movie where they made another movie called Proof. Time later.
Yes.
Right, the math play movie. Bad movie. Decent play.
And the other movie was so small that nobody cared.
He's also it was also an Australian movie called The Sum of Us, where he plays a gay character that was sort of, for 1994, like, a fairly adventurous role. Like, he's pretty good in that too.
Mm-hmm.
Thinking of his pre-Hollywood stuff. You guys don't like Gladiator? Gladiator's based on a painting. We got to cover Gladiator for that story alone.
Yeah.
It's just fucking Ridley Scott seeing a painting of a Gladiator match and being like, Gladiators, we got to do it. This is going to be great.
Can I just run through what Russell Crowe has like on deck?
Sure.
Because it's a pretty exciting lineup, actually.
He's working. The man works.
The man's working, okay? He's playing Zeus in Thor Love and Thunder.
He is.
He directed a movie that he's starring in called Poker Face, where he plays a tech billionaire who gathers his childhood friends to his Miami estate for what turns into a high-stakes game of poker. I am, to use the term, all in on that shit.
Yeah, it sounds pretty good.
He's in...
Don't love this cast, but sure.
Sure. Yeah. He's in The Greatest Beer Run Ever, which is Peter Farrelly's follow-up to Green Book. It's him and Efron, a man's story of leaving New York in 1967 to bring beer to his childhood buddies in the army while they're fighting in Vietnam. Then I think
Bill Murray is in that movie.
He is.
Yeah.
Yes. He's doing Kraven the Hunter, playing who knows what. He's playing Rothko in a Mark Rothko biopic. And then what's the last thing here? Oh, American Son. Oh, he's doing the remake of A Prophet, a movie that Sam Raimi was originally supposed to direct.
Right. He's playing the
Neil
older
Salstrup.
Guy. Yeah, the Neil Salstrup. Right.
Yes.
Yeah, that's cool.
That's an interesting lineup of movies ahead of him.
I like him working. Unhinged was a good time, but I'd like him to do more serious stuff as well.
Sure.
Another actor who's in this film, guys, is Leonardo DiCaprio.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Have you heard of him?
Yeah, familiar.
Yeah, big time movie star.
He was a recent Oscar nominee, of course, at the time, right? Because Gilbert Grape is the year before?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And he was Sharon Stone was intent on casting him. Apparently, Stone and Raimi paid him themselves out of their budget, out of their salaries, I guess. Yeah.
Correct. She was so insistent on him being hired that she had them take his salary out of her salary on this movie.
It's weird that they wouldn't want him. That's the only thing I don't understand. It's like he seems like a really hot name. Yeah.
It does feel like there might have been a perception thing. Because you also have This Boy's Life. It's like De Niro has said, like, this kid's good, right? But I almost feel like there was a perception thing of like, he's a serious actor. He's not a movie star.
Yeah. Right.
Which is incredibly bizarre to think.
Is it that he was too baby face? Like, or was it that, right, he only did like serious movies? Yeah.
I had read that Matt Damon was also considered for
They
this one.
wanted
Damon,
Damon, I think.
Sam
Yeah.
Rockwell was considered.
Yeah.
This is those 90s. Whenever like Damon or whoever is interviewed now, it's like you think about all these A-list movie stars like who are like young Hollywood bucks, like trying to get a good role, right? Like, because when Damon gets Courage Under Fire, he's like, I got the role. Like, that's why he like lost 400 pounds and was like, I gotta go all in on this.
Right.
But you could see Damon's face working in this movie. Although I love Leonardo DiCaprio in this, but like he has a harder like face, and you could see him fitting in this milieu a little more than one of the things that's both funny and odd about Leonardo DiCaprio is he just seems like a 90s teen heartthrob in this role, which is kind of what the role needs, but it's not, it doesn't fit the Western part of it.
He's not dirty at all.
He is not
a
dirty
speck
at
of dirt.
He's a
on him.
true like golden boy.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's why it does work for me, because he does feel like freaking, I mean, this isn't an old movie, but like Alden Ehrenreich and Hail Caesar or whatever, like he does feel like some shiny little Hollywood star from the 30s, right?
I think that's right. I think that's what's funny about him is he's like being cast in a Western movie. Like,
he's like, hey guys, I'm so fast, bang bang.
He's right. He's not in a Western. Like he's not. It's a complete meta commentary of a certain type of movie. Yeah.
He feels like Bobby Driscoll in like a live action Disney movie or something. Like this is the very last performance DiCaprio gives that still has any child actor energy in the like Growing Pains sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because when he makes the transition from like Growing Pains and Critters 3 and whatever, it's like, oh no, but he's working with heavy duty actors, and De Niro's telling people that he's like very serious minded and he's like wise beyond his years. And Gilbert Grape, everyone said, how could someone so young give a performance like that? This is the last movie where he's got a little bit of child star shine on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like there's that cleanness to his delivery and even just how he's styled. And I do think you're right that like Matt Damon's face, even at this age, fits into this milieu better, but it works against the movie almost if you have someone who is more realistically cast.
They leaned into something that might seem incongruous, but it worked, I think, for the movie really, really well.
And it's exactly why that fucking final moment between him and Hackman is a goddamn hammer blow. Yeah. Because when like the entire child star facade drops from him, and he's just going to the paint like full DiCaprio, it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking. And it's what you said, this thing where you're just like kind of impressed that this movie is able to pull off slow, quiet moments of genuine emotion to that degree in a film that is otherwise so kinetic and frenzied.
Right. In a film that is about a March Madness of shooting. Essentially. Like that is what it's about. Because it's like Sharon Stone rides into town. There's the little, brief prologue with Tobin Bell. But basically she rides into town and Pat Hingle is there and he's got a chalkboard with a bracket on it. And he's like, well, are you in?
Yeah.
It's a knockout.
Here's the deal with this town. We just do a fucking shootout every day at the strike of noon. And it's a quick draw. This town's run by this shitty guy.
I mean, it's such a bad town. Like, what if you want to go buy an onion?
There? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Like, it's like, sorry, there's no onion salesman here, only shooters. The only other person I want to shout out is Lance Henriksen, who we'll talk about Keith David in a second, but I don't think there's any Keith David research specifically in here. But we love Keith David, obviously. But just the funny Lance Henriksen thing is he knew someone who I guess worked in Wild West shows and stuff. His name is Rex Rossi. And Lance Henriksen, before the movie starts, before production starts, goes to Rex Rossi and says, I got to shoot a card out of this kid's hand. That's in the script. I think there should be more to it than that. So teach me a horse trick. So Rex Rossi taught him the trick where he flips off the horse backwards. And when he showed up on set, he says, Sam, I want to show you something. They bring a horse over. He jumps on the horse. He flips out off of the horse, shoots under its belly. And Sam Raimi was like, this rules. That's in the movie. Like, that's great. So Lance Henriksen showed up with a special horse trick. And I guess rather than Sam Raimi being like, Jesus, like, what? Why did you work so hard on this without telling me? Sam Raimi was like, of course, like, you got to do this.
A horse, of course.
Of course. I'm looking here at the notes. It also says that Lance Henriksen showed up to set dressed like this and said, "Where is hair and makeup?" And they said, "We're just gonna put you on camera in this look." That's a joke. But his look in this is unbelievable. The long jet black hair.
The hair, yeah.
He truly is dressed like like a rapper now.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, who's the rapper with all the face tattoos? Who's like does country stuff too? Post Malone. Malone. That's some shit Post Malone would fucking go out at the VMAs wearing.
But he's got that sort of like the Renaissance Van Dyke facial hair.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, just he's leaning so hard into his gimmick.
He has all the aces in his deck of cards for each kill.
You've got Keith David, absolutely swagged out, looking incredible. The best outfit.
Sick ass pipe.
Big pipe, big voice. Like, he's got it all. He's like,
it's incredible.
Yeah. I love the outfits in this. Like, unironically love all
But
the outfits.
They're good.
Yeah.
Such a, like, Henriksen and David are such specific castings of, like, not only are these actors who are very familiar faces to audiences at this time, even if they don't know them by name, they're gonna stick out, they're gonna remember them, and they also have incredibly distinctive voices, because you need to just introduce them the first 5 minutes, put a pin in them, and make sure the audience doesn't forget when they come back and are relevant again.
Totally.
You got Mark Boone Jr., who, of course, Griffin, you once said on his performance of Batman Begins, it looks like he sleeps under a pizza. Another Griffin line I've never forgotten.
All of my most savage burns.
No, it's just like he is the best. Anytime Mark Boone Jr. is in a movie, you're like, oh, I get it. This guy's a bit of a scumbag, isn't he? Like, he's just got the perfect face for it. He's Scars. You got Tobin Bell, Jigsaw himself.
Right. Woody Strode, this is his final movie, right?
Woody Strode, right at the end of his career. You're right. Yeah, he died before this movie even came out.
Yeah.
You got what's it called? What's his name? Roberts Blossom.
Oh,
famous old man.
Yes.
He was in Christine. We've discussed him in that. Obviously,
he was in a couple of the Demis. He's the old man in Home Alone. Yeah.
And you got Kevin Conway, who I've always liked as what's it called? As Dredd.
Yes. Judge Dredd,
who gets his dick shot off.
Yeah.
not to
and can I say,
put too fine a point
deserves
on
it. Deserves it, in my opinion.
Yeah, he's a bit of a jerk. I think Kevin Conway, yes, he played Kahless in Star Trek: The Next Generation. If anyone's a Star Trek fan out there. Yeah, it's just an incredible lineup of beautiful character actors.
Great faces. Yeah.
Such good faces.
Yeah. It's really, really fun.
And there's others I'm not remembering. And obviously, like, Bruce Campbell shows up for a second, and Gary Sinise obviously shows up in flashback, which is kind of a coup, kind of a casting coup. Gary Sinise, like right off of Forrest Gump. Yeah,
I remember that being notable at the time. Like, you see his face as a kind of daguerreotype, before he shows up, and he plays a good role, and he plays like, you can see the way that he looks and mirrors Court in a lot of ways, and it's really something. And I also think that flashback scene of her initial trauma, which takes a surprising turn, where he's like, and it mimics, or reflects the moment that Court is brought in, and he's like, they shoot at the chair and stuff, and she's given the gun to save her father and shoots him in the head instead, is like a real moment. It really, you feel it. To me, at least.
Yeah. No, I agree. You think it's a good job being genuinely visceral in all the cartooniness.
Yeah, exactly.
There's the thing I've invoked too many times, but I always just think it's such a good, like, storytelling lesson for movies. But the Andrew Stanton Finding Nemo thing, where originally he had that movie structured where you would get glimpses to the flashback of the Barracuda killing his wife and all the other babies throughout the movie. And when they screened it for people, they were like, I cannot stand this Albert Brooks character. He's driving me fucking insane. Why won't this fish calm the fuck down? And so they were like, as an experiment, what if we just take the scene and we run it in full at the very beginning of the movie, and the movie immediately worked. And it was just that thing of, like, you think you're being clever by withholding information for later, but not only is it almost never worth it, it also, you're depriving the audience of the information that will help them understand the character at the beginning. So when this movie is doling out these little glimpses as the flashbacks with Gary Sinise, I'm not turned off, but I'm like, why aren't they just telling me the thing? But that final reveal is so good. I'm like, this is one of the examples of this being done right, because you think you put together all the pieces. I get it. Hackman killed her father. That's why she hates him. Why are we like tiptoeing around this? And the final hammer blow they're like holding back on is it's the mirror of the scene you've already seen. Yeah. And you remember that moment, but it just felt like cool Western shit in that moment. Yeah. And now everything in the movie has like added weight. I think it's one of the few times where that device actually benefits the film at large.
Yeah. But you're right about the tension up to that point, because the sort of vague flashbacks don't do anything for you. They're like, they don't do much, but it really does pay off. And it does that perfect thing of make you reevaluate the rest of the movie. And you do see her fear and when that moment happens where it is the exact same scene of her father. And it just like the memory of it like jolts you in this great way of reevaluation. I think that scene is really, really great and harrowing. And it's also was truly surprising. Like I expect her to miss a bunch of times or whatever, but first shot, hits her dad is a real gut punch.
It's like it's just perfect backstory. That's all you need. Yeah. It's like everything you need to know about this character is in that one moment defining her.
And it shows her motivation, but she's not, until the end where you put all that stuff together and there's the sort of final confrontation, she is not presented as superhuman. She's presented as competent. She's presented as very good, but she doesn't shoot the rope once and not, she just go bam, bam, bam. She really it is not that she's perfect at this. She's just driven. And I think that's another great move with this movie is that,
everyone is good, obviously, at shooting. That's why they want to do the shooting. But no one is presented as a total Terminator. If anything, the kid is maybe the most naturally gifted in a way, in that he keeps being I'm so fast, and that's sort of seems to almost be a superpower.
And Gene Hackman seems to have a certain superpower to him.
He's scary, but he also feels so vulnerable in that way where you're just it's especially the scene, obviously, where the kid dies and he's it was never proven that he was my son. He's so sort of pathetic in that scene and clearly just unable to admit his humanity or whatever. You know what I mean? Yeah. That you kind of are just oh God, someone take this guy down. It's so perfect.
Yeah. Off of that, David, I'll just say too, there's the time when after a fight, when he wins, obviously, he pauses to wait for everyone to clap for him.
Yeah, exactly.
It made me think of Mr. Burns. When Mr. Burns competes in the film, you know what I mean? Festival.
Yeah. Yes.
And
yes, of course.
It just had that vibe. He is really just pathetic, truly.
Yeah, that is a really good moment. Him hold up his hands and please clap for me. It's so good.
And he's expecting it. He's like, I am, the hero of this movie, right?
Yep.
The moment with the kid is so fucking good. And you've set up this uneasy thing of DiCaprio's told you, I think he's my father, right? You've seen them have a number of exchanges and you can't tell whether Hackman is completely oblivious, knows, but is trying not to acknowledge it, or doesn't believe it's true, right?
Right.
And then, he's sort of saying enough's enough, kid. They go to the shootout. Stone's trying to talk DiCaprio out of it. He says I just need him to acknowledge me, right? I need to earn his respect.
Right. It's sad.
It's so sad. It's what do you want out of this? It's I just need him to fucking respect me. And then the moment, the way he sets that up and cuts it so that it's draw, Hackman responding to the bullet on the neck. You almost think DiCaprio's won. And then when you cut back to DiCaprio's face, you see his shock that he landed a bullet that immediately turns into the physical
he plays it really well.
He plays it really fucking well.
The collapse.
And then he just collapses. Right. He's full on embarrassing child crying, so terrified. I don't want to die, right? And Hackman stands over him and he fucking reaches out. Hackman plays that moment. Ugh. Yes. He just fucking reaches out and Hackman as you said, once DiCaprio dies, he goes through all the motions of, well, they never proved he was actually my kid.
Right.
I tried to get him out. I told him he didn't have to do this and that. Like, Hackman's making every single excuse. When he looks at DiCaprio, he is inscrutable. You cannot read his face. And DiCaprio just wants anything out of him.
Yeah. Gives him nothing. Yeah.
It's really good. And again, like Roman's saying, like, it would be easy for these more emotional moments to fall really flat because the movie's so heightened. Like, it's a tricky task, like getting that stuff to work when you also have like someone shooting a perfect hole in Keith David's head and the wind blowing through it.
So that's the other unbelievable Hackman scene for me.
Yeah.
Just
that's a really good scene. Yeah.
You've kept Keith David on the shelf for a while, right? You're like, why was Keith David introduced if you're not going to really use him for like 40 minutes or whatever? He's around, yeah, but like such a distinctive dude. Then he has that little meeting where he susses the guy out and he's like, okay, they paid you to bring me in. And then that fucking just brutal, like, the rules have changed. This is now to the death.
Right.
I'm knocking this guy down. I'm blowing a hole in the back of his head, and I'm telling all of you how quickly it turns into the like, oh, so you complained to me about not having enough money, but you paid some fucking guy to kill me?
It's great. His menace, like turning that moment around is like, just adding to his like overall power is like, it's great. It's like, I think this movie is so perfectly structured. It like, and it mimics, it really mimics a video game more than probably anything. And where you just get progressively each sort of setup of the gunfight is like, yep, that has to be the way it is. It can't be another way around. Like it has to be Court and the lady at the last one. It has to be that. It's just like it's perfectly structured, and the kid and Herod at the very end. Like all of it is like set up really, really perfectly as a plot mechanism.
And you have 4 perfect character arcs. Like
totally, and it hits it. And amongst this like really, really, really silly premise, like
it is undeniably ridiculous premise. No one could possibly defend it. It's true.
I think there is like truly one scene in this movie that feels a little bit wonky to me.
What's that?
I think it's the only scene in this movie that feels just a little bit miscalibrated, which is the Sharon Stone, Robert Blossom confrontation in the graveyard, in the rain. It just feels overcranked. Like her and Blossom are both sort of overacting. The scene is overwritten. It feels too expository. Like the movie
it's also coming kind of late, so the movie has to slow down to do it, and it's sort of like, we kind of already figured this out. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like it feels like you're kind of the movie's catching up in a way that you don't need it to. Yeah.
The rain is good though.
The rain is good. I agree.
It's good.
It's slick.
Yeah. It's not ruinous, but if you're making fun of Sharon Stone in this is the scene you make.
It's the scene to pull out. It's the one scene that maybe plays to her weaknesses. And I also think the rest of the movie is just kind of like so clean and lean and economic and diamond cut that this one scene ends up feeling a lot sloppier by comparison.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm totally able to get over it though when I'm watching it.
Whoa, me too.
Yeah. It's just such an easy watch. Yeah, go ahead, Ben.
I want to shout out Spotted Horse. That character fucking rules. I love that his whole thing is he's like, I'm just not afraid of this. Because like I don't think we really discussed him. Like his whole trait though of like, and he runs through all the bullets he's taken and he just seems so fucking badass.
He cannot be killed by a bullet. He says.
I was very sad to lose that character.
That scene is also really intense and clever.
Yeah.
The whole thing with Court like being like, get me another bullet,
Right.
With the blind kid. God, this movie is I do wonder, right, in 1995 if people were just like, too many bits. Like, there's a blind kid like rifling through the bullets. Like, like, is no one in this normal? Was that the complaint? Because I was just thinking of that scene and I'm like, right, it's not only is it everything I'm describing, but the blind kid is then working through the bullets to find a 35 millimeter or whatever. Yeah.
No, maybe everything, Raimi was too fast, too early, and culture has caught up to him, right? In how we can process information and all of this, especially when so much of it's visual. But I do think it's a thing I love about his movies where it's just like every single thing can be something. There's no unimportant detail, moment, character, performance, shot.
I think this was a victim of its time. This is a movie, and he's a director, of unfettered enthusiasm. And this was a moment in cinema where enthusiasm was not rewarded. It was really a cynical time. And but I think if you pulled it out today, people would just like, this showed up on, HBO Max today. It would be the talk. Like, everyone would love it. Everyone would think it was the most amazing second coming type of movie.
We were saying this right before we started recording, Roman. I feel like at least once a miniseries, there is a movie that we've covered on the podcast, which, because of the nature of this podcast, covering an entire career, is the kind of movie that maybe other podcasts will never devote an entire episode to. That's sort of a forgotten odd middle thing, whether, whatever. Yeah. And I feel like there's one movie per miniseries that, like, our listeners are like, holy shit, this fucking thing. How did I not know?
Yeah.
This is my new favorite movie. And I do expect that a lot of people are going to be like, oh my God, how was I unaware of this film existing? Or that's some movie I watched on TBS when I was a kid. I had no idea that was a Sam Raimi movie. Mm-hmm. It all makes more sense now.
But I remember it having 10% more mustard than you think.
Right,
or whatever.
That movie stuck in my mind as a kid, or when I saw it in a dorm room or whatever.
It's so good.
It is funny to think of it in Sam Raimi's career as well, where like we are all basically just like, I love it. More Dutch angles, more smash zooms. Like, great. But Sam Raimi's reaction to making this movie was, I need to relax. I need to retreat into a hold. He comes back in 1998 with A Simple Plan, which is his most toned down, sort of visual trickery free movie ever. Mm-hmm. But then For the Love of the Game and The Gift are similarly much more muted, right? Like, it takes him quite a while before Spider-Man sort of encourages all of his Looney Tunes stuff again. Like, he really goes into hibernation. Yeah.
And let's acknowledge the other shift is, it's what we've been like, setting this up the entire miniseries, but it is so bizarre that he gets Spider-Man at that moment because they're almost calling him off the bench to do the thing he had sort of walked away from doing.
Right.
Like, he had worked so hard to not be seen as that guy. And they were like, hey, the entire industry's changed. We need that guy. It's like them finding MacGruber like at the fucking church in Mexico going like, we need you to cut your head and come back into action.
We need an enthusiast is what they need. The thing is, like, that's what as a comic book fan, that's what we were calling for, was someone who understood the material, or at least the spirit of it in a way that nobody really did. Everyone was like, okay, we got to take him out of the costumes. We got to take him out of this. We got to ground them in this. And that was all the impulse. And he didn't do that.
Right. Cause Tim Burton, Bryan Singer, those were directors where it's like they were well-regarded directors, but in the interviews they'd be like, "Yeah, I never really read a comic book," like and that was seen as like good. They're not going to embarrass us here or whatever, right? And Sam Raimi is a different vibe.
I just remember walking out of the first Spider-Man and going, "That's the first movie I've seen that actually feels like a comic book." And so many people had tried to, in a literal way, like Dick Tracy style, make something look like a comic book. But then they're like, you can make a movie with the aesthetics of illustration. And that's the first movie where I'm like, emotionally, this feels like a comic book.
Right. That they took the archness of its presentation. Yes. And the thing was, when I read comic books, I treated them seriously. Like they had emotion between the panels, and it wasn't just putting a proscenium arch around a frame. It really was something else. And I thought that he captured that for the first time more than anybody. And then also the technical aspects of it were so great. And he just sort of nailed it. And it wasn't until actually, I thought he was pretty muted for him in Spider-Man 1 and then Spider-Man 2, where they have an actual horror scene inside of it with the Doc Ock surgery, where you go good. Like, oh God, that's the guy. That's Sam
right.
Raimi,
now he's fully back in it. Right. One, it still sort of feels like he's auditioning a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah,
you'll
get there.
Yeah,
it's a lot.
The other thing, just to call out before I guess we should go on the box office game or any other thoughts we have, is that the other thing that happens in the 3 years between this and Simple Plan, when he sort of tries to remake himself as like a serious adult picture maker, is the entire TV empire.
Yeah, which is that's part of his hibernation, right? That's part of him being like, okay.
Yeah. He's doing something else. Yeah. And he's actually figuring out a really good path for him, which is kind of fascinating and probably both more lucrative and more like ability to have success, and also not have your life determined by a bunch of morons who run movie studios.
That's the biggest thing, I think, Roman, is he sort of gets his freedom. He gets his sort of like confidence, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
He's built this little empire. It's syndicated. They're not really beholden to anybody. It's ever expanding. He's employing all of his friends and his brothers.
Yeah.
And it's like that, it puts a lot of the anxieties to bed, maybe, so that he's able to come back and just go like, what do I want to do as a filmmaker? That's the only concern.
Yeah, it makes total sense to me that it would take something like Spider-Man to be like, okay, well, that's a thing with enough resources and enough, you know, like whatever to pull me off of this other thing in which I control everything and I don't have to listen to any of you idiots, you know, and that's a good position to be in your career, to be able to say no to everything, which he probably did. He probably said no to a ton of things that we would have loved him to do, but it just wasn't right, and more power to him.
We'll do at some point in some episode, but he's one of those guys where there is an entire Wikipedia entry just on unmade Sam Raimi projects. It's not a subsection of his wiki page. It is its own page. I'll say a non-merchandise spotlight. I know you've made the comparison very aptly a number of times now, Roman, but watching this, I kept on thinking like, God, I really wish there had been like a Sega Genesis game. It just, you could
seriously
the shootout game with all of these guys who would translate so perfectly into that sort of pixelated art style.
Someone make that now. Make a a web browser shooting game, 16-bit. I want to see, frickin' Keith David and Lance Henriksen's faces all pixelated. Like, give me that, please. With Gene Hackman as the final boss, obviously. Right.
Yeah. Yes. Right. It feels like a layup.
It's perfect.
So yeah. What are some moments we have? Obviously, this movie is sort of all moments. I do love Pat Hingle. Shout out Pat Hingle. Very well cast here as the bartender. Gordon. Commissioner Gordon himself with a little bowler hat.
We've joked about this before, but it is so funny that like casting Commissioner Gordon now is like casting a Iago or something. And it's like, who is worthy of picking up the badge? And at that point, they were like, I don't know, who's some guy who looks like a cop? Like, Pat Hingle never fit Commissioner Gordon as a type.
I mean, God love him. I mean, I love him both in all movies and as Commissioner Gordon. But it is funny that every other Commissioner Gordon, well, I mean, the ones post Gary Oldman, right? Yeah. It's like a soft-spoken, intelligent, cerebral kind of, war-weary cop. Pat Hingle's just like basically got a pocket watch. He's like, Batman, are you here yet? Mr. Freeze is tearing up the museum. Like, he's just... Anyway,
it feels like every scene right before he goes on camera, he goes like, what's my guy's name again?
Yeah, exactly.
Commissioner what?
So Pat Hingle. Anything else? Yeah?
The ending, I think, I mean, it's fun that the last 20 minutes of this movie are like an extended work, right? Like everything from DiCaprio's death on.
And the payoff, like I love Court kind of turning superhuman for, at this last moment where he just like shoots people behind his back and like you get like his full powers and realize how much he's been holding back. And the whole premise of like, she's literally not a better gunfighter than Gene Hackman. Mm-hmm. But in this moment she is, and both you believe it, Gene Hackman believes it. Right. They just made that really work for me. Like they built up this whole thing to lead to this moment, and it's super convincing and it's very satisfying ending. And then she throws the Marshall Star at Court, who's now going to be, like the new sheriff in town.
Just what you wanted, even though you haven't been thinking about it.
You haven't been thinking about it at all. And you're like, yep, oh, that's perfect. Like it has all these things that come together, and then and then black, and then it's like done. And it's like no wasted time,
I mean, sheriff of what's left of the fucking
sure. I know. Not the greatest town in the world.
She left quite a mess in her wake.
Is it a lot of people showing up being like, hey, is this where we do the shooting? And it's like, no, we don't do that anymore. Like, is that happening over and over again? Like, I don't know.
It is this thing I love, though, that, she throws the star back to him. You're completing his arc, right? Here is this guy who never wanted to be a killer, who was forced to shoot this passer, who's tried to recommit himself to the cloth because he feels like he can never get over the sin. They tease him out. He realizes these innate instincts he has. He cannot help but kill when placed in this situation. That first moment, his first shootout, when you truly feel like he's ready to die, and he is surprised that his hand reached for the gun and shot that fast.
It's really, really cool. Right.
It's shot really well, and he's also his twitchiness when they give him guns to to and he's looking at them, and he knows how to use them, and he knows he wants to touch them, and it's all there. It's shot really, really well, and it's super convincing. And then you get this moment at the end where you're like, I wasn't thinking about this. I wasn't thinking about the redemption of Court this whole time at all. And then it's like, oh, this is the perfect marriage of the things he's feeling and wants to, make amends for, and his literal skill set, and it makes tons of sense. It just works.
It feels like this very clean, neat, tidy, happy ending that is fully earned.
Yeah.
But he lingers on it for an additional moment before it fades to black, where you see him looking at the badge and considering it. Raimi could have cut a second or two earlier, and it was just, he has the badge, everything's in order. And it does feel like there's this extra moment there of him looking at it and debating whether or not he wants to do this. And I think of all 3 Spider-Man movies end like that. It is this thing that's so distinctive in those movies that all 3 movies end with this weird lingering moment of Mary Jane being like, what happens now? All 3 of them end on her face, I think.
Yeah.
And the Evil Dead movies obviously all end with Ash getting upended in some way. But I feel like he always needs to pull the rug a little bit, or at least leave some kind of Graduate-esque lingering question of but is it really going to be that tidy? The guy's still at odds with himself a little bit,
That's interesting. I think I read that differently. I think I read it as taking time for you to recognize the genius of all this stuff coming together in the right way is part of the way I read that too. But that's super fascinating.
I do think he becomes sheriff, but I don't think it's something that
it's not a tidy resolution in the end.
I don't think he can take it on easily. I think
he's nothing else. He has to just start hiring a bunch of contractors to come.
Yeah.
He's got shit to do.
Absolutely.
Such a good fucking movie.
It's a good fucking movie.
It's a good fucking movie. You want to play that box office game?
Wait,
What's
okay.
up, Ben?
Last thing. Lance Hendrickson's death, the squib shot.
Oh. Also, the speed with which everyone takes all of his clothing.
Oh, I know. Yeah. It starts fighting each other over it.
And him, the image of him in his long underwear after he's been stripped, and he's just this naked, plucked chicken looking thing, is a real, also kind of
pathetic
and sad, and is a good image to end on him with all of his since he's all surface, he's all leather and and playing cards and stuff.
It was all the costume basically. I mean, not all, but yeah. Love Lance Henriksen at all times. He also seems like someone who would scare the shit out of me in real life.
Oh,
but that's
absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. The box office game for this one is great. I got to be honest.
Okay,
with you guys.
well,
this film came out February 10th, 1995.
Okay.
This is there's a lot of Ben's choices in here, I think. Just want to say.
Wow.
Quick and the Dead opened number 2, $6.5 million on its way to an $18 million gross, which is about half its budget. So
rude.
Not
so
good.
bad. Yeah.
Unfortunately. But it is also opening behind a very dumb comedy that was the launch, I would say, of a major comedy star.
So is
Billy Madison?
Is this sort of a Ben pick?
It's a bit of a Ben pick, and it is indeed the film Billy Madison. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I do think getting your lunch eaten by Billy Madison, if you're Sharon Stone and you're big fancy Western, is not a good look, right? Yeah.
It's rough, especially that one where it's a particularly dumb style movie. Although I think it's a very good, that's one of my favorites of his.
Absolutely. Right.
Yeah.
We all agree.
Yeah.
That's top tier Sandler. Yeah.
Tamara Davis is also someone, if there was ever a Ben region in March Madness, she is a real candidate.
Yeah, well, it's a weird bunch of movies. It's Gun Crazy, which I've never seen, but is the Drew Barrymore, Michael Ironside kind of action indie, right?
Yeah.
Then CB4,
Uh-huh.
which is
wow.
a crucial pop culture artifact.
Yep.
Then Billy Madison. Then Best Men, the Dean Cain anti-Dick. I've never seen
Right. That doesn't
movie.
really exist. But what's the next one, David?
It's a little film called Half Baked.
Hell yeah. Half Baked is like hands down the movie I've seen the most.
Dude, not too surprising to hear that. Then Skipped Parts, which is like a Jennifer Jason Leigh movie that never really came out. Then the Britney Spears movie Crossroads.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And then she made like a Basquiat documentary. And
okay,
that's
also
it.
an incredible like amount of music videos for awesome bands. Like
Yes.
Yes, she was a big music video director.
some really huge stuff.
A lot of TV as well.
But also,
She still works in
let's
TV.
not brush over her Basquiat documentary. She worked at an art gallery in 1986, or is it 83? She was friends with Basquiat. It's a documentary of footage she shot interviewing him as her friend
Right.
2
And then
years
he
before
died.
he died, and she sat on it for 20 years before she was ready to edit it. So it's like someone making a documentary with all this unbelievable unseen footage from
Fine, we're doing Tamara Davis. It's
She's
Put
decided.
it on
Okay.
the list.
Half
very cool.
podcasted. I don't know.
Okay.
Billy Madison #1. Quick
This
and
is
the Dead
hard.
#2.
Mhm.
Number 3 is it's a holdover from Christmas season. It's a very Tony, pretty, epic movie that is not very good. It's one of those movies that was clearly a major Oscar play and was widely ignored, except for technical nominations. But it is a major moment for its star, who is on the up and up. It's one of those movies that is basically forgotten, except as sort of a title, and its score is kind of famous.
It's a period film?
It is. It's a Western as well. It's another Western, actually. We forgot to mention this one. So frontier movie. Big. It's long. It's dramatic. There's crying. People die. You know.
Did you have a guess until he said Western Roman? It looked like you had a notion.
No, I nothing is ringing a bell with me, and this is a hallmark of me listening to the show and listening to the box office games. So yeah, I have no idea.
The score is sending me because I feel like I keep track of like those
It's
sort of
a
weirdly
famous one.
overused scores
Overused in trailers a lot.
that people
yes.
even forget what movie they're originally from.
Exactly.
And you say
that
it would be holiday time of 94.
It was released Christmas '94. It was a hit. It made a lot of money. It made not enough that it made $66 million, 160 worldwide. You know, it was a pretty solid hit for what I think is an R-rated, super long. It's like 2 hours 20 minutes or whatever. Yeah.
What about the director?
He's a director who has made a lot of epic films.
Okay.
He's a fairly major director, but I would say he is not the best director
It's not a
in the world.
Zwick, is it?
It is a Zwick.
It is a Zwick. So what's the Zwick after Glory?
It's after Glory. He also did a movie called Leaving Normal in between this and Glory with Christine Lottie and Meg Tilly. I think one of his better movies. Of course, he does Courage Under Fire right after this movie. I already mentioned that this episode.
So is this The Last Samurai?
It's not The Last Samurai. That's in the 2000s.
Okay, that's why I'm really far off, but that's the only thing I can think of. That's the first time I remember his name.
That is a Zwick, of course. He also made Blood Diamond. He made The Siege. He made Love and Other Drugs, somewhat bizarrely.
It's not Legends of the Fall, is it?
It's Legends of the Fall.
Okay.
Brad Pitt, Anthony Hopkins, Aidan Quinn, Julia Ormond.
Yes.
A movie I recently watched for reasons I cannot remember.
Never
Can
seen
confirm. Pretty boring. Looks
Pretty
nice.
boring. Right.
And it's kind of like a Pitt performance because this is post, Pitt emerging as like Himbo King, Johnny Suede, Thelma and Louise, Cool World, right? Like it's post that. It's in his like River Runs Through It, Interview with the Vampire Legends of the Fall days where he's so pretty, but he's boring. Like he doesn't get to have any fun. Like, and it's like once he's in 12 Monkeys and True Romance and shit, it's like fun. Yes, right. Brad Pitt is actually a very twitchy, over the top actor.
It is funny that 95 is 7 and 12 Monkeys. Like Legends of the Fall, Interview with the Vampire is peak, like 94. Let Brad Pitt just be pretty. Let him stand.
He's straight up bad in Interview with the Vampire. Like Tom Cruise acts him off the screen in that movie. And it's annoying because it should be like, here we go, Cruise and Pitt,
Right.
Like, this is going to be great. And Pitt is such a dish rag in that movie. And In Legends of Fall, he's a little more fun, but he's just very serious, very serious.
Sure.
It's a James Horner score, Griff. It's
right.
It's
Yeah.
common, common.
No. For some reason, I always think that movie's earlier because of how big it was for Pitt's career. But yes, yeah, that's why I was second guessing it.
Number 4 is a dramedy, female characters. I've never seen it. It's the final film of a fairly well-known director who had a very long career making, Hollywood comedies and dramas. 3 female stars. I would say 2 very famous at the time. 1 kind of on the up and up, but famous now.
I always get these confused. Is it Boys on the Side?
It's Boys on the Side.
Okay.
Well done. Who directed it, Griffin?
That's what I'm trying to remember. Boys on the Side is Herbert Ross?
It's a Herbert Ross. It's his last film.
Okay.
After a very obviously Herbert Ross made Funny Lady and The Turning Point and The Goodbye Girl and Pennies from Heaven. He made so many, Footloose, Steel Magnolias. He made tons of movies. It's written by Don Roos, which is interesting, Griffin. Before obviously he becomes a director. Yeah, Whoopi Goldberg, Drew Barrymore, Mary Louise Parker.
I get Boys on the Side confused with How to Make an American Quilt.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I think that's okay.
And I feel like there's one other movie of that era where I'm just like, which combination of the actors is it? Those movies where they're kind of generational. And I'm like, which one's Drew Barrymore? Which one's Winona Ryder? Which one's Whoopi? Which one's Anne Bancroft?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Has anyone seen Boys on the Side?
I've not.
No, I've not seen Boys on the Side. It is really amazing to watch this in person because I was 20 years old when this came out, and I have no memory of it whatsoever. I think you were maybe 9, Griff.
I don't even want to tell you how old I was.
I think he was like 6.
I was 6. I was 6.
And so this is a pleasure to watch. So
honestly, he was about to turn 6. It's February 95.
My birthday's coming up. Yeah.
All right, number 5 at the box office. It's a hit comedy that had come out in Christmas. It's made $111 million.
Is it like a family comedy?
No, it is more of a teen gross out vibe, although the characters are not teens.
Sure. Okay, so it's a 1994 gross out comedy. Is it Dumb and Dumber?
It's Dumb and Dumber.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Another Ben pick, right, Ben? I'm sure you liked Dumb and Dumber.
No, I hated it. It was actually really felt like so beneath me, kind of.
You found it disrespectful.
Yeah, it was disrespectful, it was tasteless,
Absolutely.
vulgar.
I'm sorry for saying anything, Ben.
Yeah, I mean, I don't love when somebody just makes a really loud, annoying noise for a long, extended period of time, driving a hitman insane.
Not your kind of thing.
And leading him to have a heart attack. That isn't hilarious to me.
Some other movies in the top 10. You've got Nobody's Fool, the Paul Newman Oscar vehicle. You've got In the Mouth of Madness, a little movie we've discussed before.
Very good movie.
Great
I remember
movie.
seeing in the theater, and I enjoyed your coverage of it. I think that one's another underrated movie.
Agreed. I think that was similarly kind of the Quick and the Dead of that series.
Yeah.
You got the kind of mostly forgotten film Murder in the First, which was one of the
That's
many...
Kevin Bacon Oscar play. Yeah.
Exactly. One of the many early 90s movie that Kevin Bacon pops in and he got like a SAG nomination and got an Oscar. There's just like that run of Bacon in the 90s where it's like it's post, cute Bacon in the 80s. Yeah. It's him proving himself, like JFK, Few Good Men, River Wild, Murder in the First, Apollo 13. Right.
I don't need to be the star. I want to do good supporting parts in big movies. Yeah.
He's good in all of them, and he's always overlooked.
Is Gary Oldman the other counterpart in that one, or am I thinking of a different movie?
Well, Gary Oldman, of course, is in JFK. He plays Lee Harvey Oswald.
But in Murder in the First?
Yes, he is in Murder in the First with Christian Slater.
Right,
as well.
Slater is
he's the do-gooder lawyer who's defending Kevin Bacon, and I think Oldman might be the villain lawyer or something.
He's the associate prison warden of Alcatraz.
Oh, he's the prison warden. Here. That's right. Yeah, and he's actually really good. This is one of those movies that's like it's a total 6 out of 10.
Yeah,
but the actors, Slater is kind of whatever, but like everyone else is good because William H. Macy is in it,
and Beth Davids, Brad Dourif, Arlie Ermey, Tobolowsky, Mia Kirshner.
Arlie Ermey is the judge, I think.
Yeah,
guess what? He has a lot of fun. It's a very subtle performance, of course, by Arlie Ernie. Ben, another film here I'm noticing that maybe you were interested in, number 9, The Jerky Boys film in theaters. You were
no, again, guys? David, you're completely off.
Of course, right.
Prank calls, like I was too busy just deep into reading Moby Dick and fine works of literature. I would never laugh. At like a guy who says you kicked my dog.
And number 10 at the box office, Highlander 3, The Sorcerer, also known as Highlander, The Final Dimension.
Another Ben pick.
Another Ben pick, of course, because
can we say Ben
pitched us.
He's been petitioning to do Highlander on Patreon.
Yeah, so if you guys are into that, hit us up.
A series of diminishing returns that you will have that will be a hard day for you.
Right. It'll be fun though.
It will be very
have a
blast.
David, I'm sorry. Just to circle back quickly, I think I missed or you maybe weren't specific enough. Which Jerky Boys movie was it in the top 10 at this point?
Which one? It's the Jerky Boys.
I think it's the original recipe.
It's the original, 1995. Yeah. The Jerky Boys. The movie.
I'm just confused. They made so many successful movies together. It was hard to.
All right.
The Jerky Boys. Okay.
81 minutes long. Honestly, longer than I thought it would be when I looked up the running time. I was like, was this a cool 75? No, they got it to 81. Okay. Yeah.
So it can qualify for Oscars,
Yeah.
Above 80. Yeah.
So that's your top 10. Fun top 10, in my opinion, even
Very
though
fun
The Quick and the Dead was treated rudely.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're done.
Roman, you host a wildly successful podcast that does not need our boost. 99% Invisible, but it's a phenomenal show.
Thank you so much. It's a real honor to be here. Like I've listened to nearly every episode of this show. I'm a Patreon subscriber.
Wow.
It was my real companion during the beginning of the COVID novel coronavirus. And
the what?
Yes, I'm familiar with it. But like especially I jumped in there with all the Marvel movies and this show means a great deal to me. So I'm really honored to be here. Thank you so much.
It is long overdue. You've been very kind to us, and we've been talking with you for like years now since you started listening to the show, and you've been very supportive and
my
a good friend to the podcast, even though it's only manifesting on mic now. But I'm glad I threw you just sort of the list of like, oh, by the way, we should have you on at some point. Here are some of the things. And you immediately sparked to like Quick and the Dead rules.
Yeah, when you mentioned Raimi, the one thing is like I feel like when it comes to like Evil Dead and Spider-Man, like there's a scholar of these things that is required for those movies in a certain way, and Quick and the Dead is sort of my favorite and also low stakes enough for me to feel like I wouldn't ruin it.
We do arguably have 3 different scholars lined up for the Spider-Man trilogy.
We do. Yeah, it's gonna be that's gonna be a good little run there.
I think it's a good run.
No, but it's a real pleasure to be here, and thanks so much. And
pleasure's all ours. Now, please never come on the show again. You make us sound like pubescent boys.
No, you'll be back.
I think I did great.
I think everyone sounds marvelous. Everyone sort of talks about my voice, but like I'm a big lover of all voices, to tell you the truth. Like that is not a bias I have.
Yeah, but your voice is better. Even just the way you said that.
Yeah.
I couldn't deliver it that well. Thank you all for listening. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe. Thank you to
Roman, he says subscribe.
I refuse to say follow.
Which it's just
I'm all team Griffin on this one.
Thank you.
All right.
Even if the terminology is wrong, everyone knows what I'm saying.
I don't like follow. I don't know what it means. I know subscribe means something different to people, but it's like it's one of those ones that I do not like follow. I don't know what does it mean. I'm going to download the thing. I don't know.
I don't know. That's my thing. I'm like, I feel like if I say rate, review, and follow, people are like on social media.
Exactly.
No.
I feel your pain as a producer, Ben, because I'm a longtime producer in addition to being a host. And when you try to get your hosts to do something and they will refuse to do, I understand that pain. So I'm with you on that side. That you're just trying to do what's right for the show.
I don't know what you're talking about. I'm a dream otherwise. It's never difficult to get me to do anything.
But subscribing is what it's called. I can't get behind
you
this.
You gotta subscribe.
All right. Well, you gotta then it's official. We've decided we're back to subscribe.
You gotta subscribe. And here's the thing: if you want to follow, you can follow our social media accounts run by Marie Barty David's happy that I pulled off that transition. He's also saying wrap it up. Thank you to AJ McKee and Alex Barron for our editing, JJ Birch, Nick Loriano for our research, Lane Montgomery and the Great American Novel for a theme song, Pat Reynolds, Joe Bowen for our artwork. You can go to blankcheckpod.com for all the nerdy things that used to take up 7 different callouts in this outro. Tune in next week for A Simple Plan. You can go to patreon.com/blankcheck for Blank Check special features, where at this point we are getting ready to do the Batman movies, right?
Yes.
We're doing all the Batman movies we haven't covered before. It's called #NotAllBatmen.
That's very exciting.
So no Burton, no Nolan, but we're including animateds. I think it'll be a fun, weirdly diverse series, considering that all the movies star a Batman. And as always, this is a different thing than I usually do for And As Always, but I felt like I had to read this, David. It could not go unread. The final little bit that JJ and Nick put in their research dossier for this week, for Quick and the Dead, is not specifically relevant to this movie, but I just think it's a beautiful thing. It says, there's this great quote from Bruce Campbell that I want to throw in because I haven't yet talked about how much Raimi loves to garden. And this is the quote. He's had compost piles in the back of his house from the first time I've known him. Sam used to take Super 8 film and grind it up and then grow vegetables and eat the vegetables. He's the only filmmaker who eats film.
That is pretty cool.
That's pretty fucking cool.
That's both like cool and sweet and also badass. So.
Yeah. And I hope his digestive tract is handling that okay.
Thanks to Griffin, Newman, and David Sims for having me on. Right now, you need to go find Blank Check on your podcast app, scroll through the episodes, find a couple movies that you know and love, and give it a shot. And then I almost 100% guarantee you will listen to a couple about movies that you don't know as well, but are just curious about. And then you're going to be listening to a 2-hour conversation about Nancy Meyers' 2015 movie, The Intern, starring Robert De Niro, which you haven't seen, and loving the discussion, but also thinking, how did I get here? Just go for it. I would not steer you wrong. Thanks again to Griffin and David and producer Ben Hosley, a.k.a. Producer Ben, Purduer Ben, the Ben-Deucer, the Poet Laureate, the Meat Lover, the Tiebreaker, the Fart Detective, our finest film critic, the Peeper, Birthday Benny, Hello Fennel, not Professor Crispy, the Fuckmaster, Dirtbike Benny, White Hot Benny, Soaking Wet Benny, the Haas, Mr. Positive, Mr. Positive, close personal friend of Dan Lewis, the Voice of Reason, Santa Haas, the Commish, Wishful Ben, Hosleywood, the Futzer, Producer N. He has adopted various sobriquets at the end of each miniseries, including Producer Ben Kenobi, Kylo Ben, Ben Knight Shyamalan, Ben Sate, Say Bennything, Ailey Ben with a $, Warhaz, Purduer Bane, Ben 19 the Fennel Maker, Robo Haas, Banglish, Mr. Ben Credible, Eat Drink Ben Hosley, Beetle Vape Juice, The Hosliday, Public Benemies, Hasika of the Ditch of the Jersey, Stop Making Bens, Haas, Pig in the City, Ben Hosley Met Sally, The Secret Life of Ben's, The Great Mouse Fart Detective, The Hosbreak Kid, Ben's and the Haas, Benscape from New Haas, and Bronco Hosley.